Good morning, everyone. Could I ask if, let's see, Councillor Lee Red, so you're online. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Chair, and happy birthday.
Couldn't hear him very well, but thank you, Lee. Sure, we can deal with that. Okay.
Sorry, I moved the microphone down this time.
Oh, no,
yes,
it's him.
yes,
it's
Chair,
him,
we can
us,
hear you.
Okay.
And
Thank
happy
you very
birthday
much.
for yesterday.
Thank you. Well, welcome to the meeting of Scrutiny Committee of Climate and Place. This is an additional meeting. Everybody can hear in the room because I can hear, and we can hear online. The agenda pack with papers is available via ModGov or directly from the council website from the link which was sent out to members. Lee advised that following the tragic incident on the M5 that took place on Sunday night into Monday morning, item 6 has been deferred to the January meeting of the committee, although I will be opening up a brief discussion on that matter when we get to it. When I invite somebody to speak, could you clearly state who you are for the benefit of anybody who is listening to the meeting so they can identify who is speaking and ensure that you use the microphones if you're in the room. And I warmly welcome any members of the public and media who are joining us today online or in the room. This meeting is being recorded by the council. As agendas are now viewed electronically, could I kindly request that members and officers refer to page numbers from the published agenda pack to assist all present in finding the appropriate information. And in respect of housekeeping, there is no expected fire alarm, but should this happen, please follow the Democratic Service colleagues and they will lead the way out to the car park at the rear of the building. On that matter, we're all in. Did anybody else struggle to get parked this morning? Yeah. Yeah, well, we did, and we were quite early. Well, we're in the road anyway. Thanks. It'd be good to know that. Next. Oh, it's no idea.
Yes, I believe so. That is normal practice to park round Shire Hall. So I haven't been. My bike was no problem parking, but
you're a good man. I say this because well, I don't think we'll have to move it because we can remotely add to our enormous fee for parking. There's something topical, right? Apologies for absence. We have.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, committee. We have received apologies for absence from Councillor Boyden, from Councillor Martin and from Councillor Bradford, and also from Councillor Burt, for whom Councillor Denton is substituting.
Thank you very much. Let's move on to agenda item 3, which is declarations of interest. Any members have interest to declare on the no? Okay. Thank you. Moving on, public question time. We have no questions received in advance, so we will move on. Agenda item 5, outcome tracker. Jamie Jackson is going to take us through the outcome tracker as the first item, and then we'll have comments afterwards. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Members will note one of the sort of changes we've made following the scrutiny review was to separate out the outcome tracker and the forward work programme. So the intention now for all 5 scrutiny committees, as is currently, will be that the outcome tracker will be considered at this point in the agenda, which is for members to reflect on any progress that has been or not been on previous actions that have been suggested or agreed by the committee. And then the opportunity to add items to the forward work programme will be the last item on the main agenda, in order that there's then opportunity to add things that may have come up during the course of debate and discussion that day. So members will hopefully have in front of them the outcome tracker as it is now. Obviously, members will see that there are some fairly long-standing items on that. We are working with service officers to sort of update those, and obviously anything that currently appears in green will disappear off the outcome tracker for the next meeting. I think there's only a couple that fall into that camp at the moment. And I'm very happy to open the discussion to members, Chair.
Any questions, please? Dave, Councillor Mansell.
Thank you. Yeah, a few points, please. So, and I think this is a very helpful item. I do. It's good to see how things are progressing. A really minor comment, but I will just make it. In places, it reads a little bit like minutes, just in places, and it's meant to be our requests and recommendations that it focuses on, and it would shorten it if the minutey bits weren't there. So just a comment.
That's a fair point.
Thanks. So then more specifically, we mentioned it last time, and again, this is nitpicking. My other points would be more substantial. On page 24, we've got about the task and finish group still there. It's now clear that it's an officer task and finish group. It's still not our recommendation or anything. It was just something officers are doing, and it somehow crept into our requests and recommendations, which I'm certain it never was. Really, it just shouldn't be there. It should be deleted. So, and then page, I think the next one is 34. Right. Yeah, so this was at our meeting in October, and it was agreed that the executive would be asked to review the 2030 carbon neutrality target. Can I ask what's happened on that? Who's it been passed to? Have we had a response? So what is there any outcome on that since October, or at least, you know, some indication of what's happening with it? Shall we do with that one, and or shall I do the
Take
others?
that one, if that can be answered. Jamie, or I've got James. Would you be able to help us out on this one, James Dival?
Yeah. So in terms of formal as an action from the committee, I don't think it's come up through us. I think it was an action to go up through the Democratic Services. However, it could be added to the executive report for the vision document. So that the report you have today on the vision document, we could add it as a recommendation from Scrutiny there.
Thank you. You happy with that, Dave? Your mic, yeah.
There we go. So, right, and then I thought just worth mentioning from last time to make sure we haven't got it. At the moment, we've not got anything under 19th of November. I think there were at least two. One was there was a recommendation on Sunday parking charging, and there was an outcome on that yesterday at executive, and there was also an action on travel plans, which we requested. So I just wanted to make sure they don't get lost.
I think that's minuted. Okay, thank you. Henry, I think you had your hand up.
Sorry about that. The first one is the 20th of April 2024, which is at Paul is under your nominal name, and I can see that we've moved forward on that. I understand that the report is coming in January to this committee. Yes, Chris. To the phosphate issue.
So the commitment we've made is to bring that report to this committee. The exact date will be determined by the completion of the report and its sign off, but there is a commitment to bring it here.
I just wanted that noting, please. Going down the thing for the 20th of December 2024, this has come under James's nominations now, and it's not really happened, James, and we need it to be resurrected and pushed, because if things go the way that I'm hoping that they go with the phosphates, there will be a sum of money that needs to be integrated into the water quality on the levels. Thank you. And also under your thing is a local nature recovery strategy. Are you now sorted for the letter going to full council?
That the local nature recovery strategy adoption, or was it the landscape recovery business case that you asked me about? The first one, local nature recovery strategy, because that is, if that's the correct one, because there was two actions that you've had for me, isn't there? There was a landscape recovery business can, which in principle at this moment in time we've supported the application to DEFRA for the Greater Sedgemoor landscape recovery programme, and then there's a business case to look at hosting being developed still, and then the local nature recovery strategy. I think Steve Jury provided an update last meeting, and that was the scrutiny aspect of the process going through governance, and it will be going to, I've got a feeling, Jamie, January or February, local nature recovery strategy executive. February it could be, yeah. And in terms of the water quality one, yeah, it's on my radar. What I'm just trying to have a look at is again governance, of looking at the correct framework for that to sit under and ensure that we've got the appropriate resources to move that one forward. So it's a priority area. I understand that. I just need to make sure that we've got the governance and the strategic direction of how we attach it, and that's all part of what we're discussing today anyway, the vision.
Short range radar or long range radar?
Short to mid, I would like to say, but yes, we're moving in the right direction about getting the right resources in place.
Sorry, Chair, can I just come in? The adoption and publication of local nature recovery strategy is scheduled for the 4th of March, executive.
Any other questions on this item? Thank you for bringing this forward, Jamie and officers, and therefore we will, having minuted the issues that we're concerned about, we will move on to the next item. Thanks very much. Okay, the next item 6. Now this has been deferred, but while we have the floor here, if anybody wants to, any questions or anything to bring forward when we eventually do get to hear from the external guests that are coming in on the matter of the M5 incident management, that's the police and highways. Would you like to, Dandy Dingwall, would you like to raise any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, it was a question about the reason for deferral. It's relating to a recent incident. Is there a specific reason that it was deferred? Are the people tied up on that incident? Or my worry is that we get to January and there's another incident. I mean, the reason we have a briefing is there are many incidents on the M5, and we've already pushed this along the road a long way. If anything, the recent incident should spur us on for this to be more urgent, not to be deferred further.
Without being disrespectful on this matter, accepting there was a serious incident on, I think, Friday, I would support your case here. There are incidents sadly happening all the time, and this matter has been deferred for a long time. And without being critical, I very much hope that this will come forward at the next meeting. And I think I'd like that minuted as well, obviously. Thanks, Steph. Any other points? Yes, Dave.
My recollection is one, that this was first proposed by Councillor Rigby. The other one is that the focus for attention was the impact on the local roads around the M5 when it gets closed, and that, as I understood it, was what the concern was about and what the discussion was about. It has struck me that very few of us, I don't absolutely know, but I don't know how many of us live within the vicinity. I'm just a little worried, whether how well placed we are to actually understand those impacts, and whether one way that may be addressed is by making sure the members in the vicinity of the M5 are notified that it's being discussed. I think it would be really helpful if Councillor Rigby was here, as he requested it in the first place, because then you know, we can discuss what the issues are, but I'm not close to the M5, so we don't get backing up back in Wivelscombe when it's closed. So I'm not too well aware of what it is.
I think that's a good question, and it should be publicly, it should be made obvious amongst the councillors that they may wish to listen to this presentation, ask their own questions. So thank you very much for that. Councillor Richard Wilkins, from the executive member for this area. There's microphone issue. Richard.
Yes, I would say that you do have at least two people in the committee that are very much affected by the M5. I myself, in my region, although set quite a distance away from the M5, we are very much affected by both the M5 and the A303. When there's closures there, it affects the vast majority of Somerset. I think you should consider yourself lucky that you feel that Wivelscombe is not affected so much. But I'm sure the vast majority of people are affected here, and I do know that Councillor Rigby will be very keen to take part in any discussion in this regard. I myself have already had many discussions with National Highways and the police on this matter, and I'm really looking forward to it coming to this committee. And I would hope that you would. I would hope that there's enough people here that have an understanding of the issues, especially on the M5, and I'm looking over that side of the room on this, and I've got no doubt that there will be many pertinent questions coming. So yeah.
Thank you, Richard. I probably okay now before I speak, I'll allow Councillor John Cook-Wilburn, please.
No, I haven't got an issue with that. Yeah, no, I think it's, and if we're going to discuss it, we've got to make sure we've got the right information. I mean, Highways England are the people who run the motorways, and also the fire service as well, the people who do the rescuing, and also the police, but also finding out the more and more proliferation of electric vehicles. What happens to electric vehicle if it catches fire on the motorway? In other countries, for example, they pick them up and they put them in water vats, because and that's one thing they do. I don't know what the plan is from Highways England on the motorways to deal with those situations as they get more and more problematic, and those sort of things also ought to feed into the information that we discuss at this scrutiny meeting, because it's a plan for the future that we should be thinking about, and therefore we need modern solutions for modern problems.
Well, mate, thank you. I'll just read. Lee Redman has put a note in the chat, and he says he plans to be in the debate. As we can see, as Bridgewater has two junctions, the area covered needs to include details of how National Highways deal with issues and what are their action plans for incidents. The ability for members to do better understand operating process will be helpful. Yes, that's the general gist of the meeting of the item. And Marcus Kravitz, sorry, Marcus, I missed you. I should have called you earlier.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. No, I just want to say, when the comment that it doesn't necessarily affect everyone. If you live in the southwest, I mean, from an economic point of view, I think it affects an awful lot of people in the southwest, whether you're close to the M5 or not. If it gets to the point on a Friday night where it's quicker to fly to New York than it is to drive to Cornwall, I think that we need to look at it from the economic aspects as well as the actual physical aspects of whether you've got extra traffic going past your door on a certain day. That's a vital, I don't know what the word is, Richard probably help me out, but it's a vital part of the whole of the southwest economy.
Thank you. Councillor Wilkins would like to come back.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to direct you to my my discussions on a more broader level with Peninsula Transport, which incorporates Cornwall, Devon and Somerset, where I have raised the issue of the fact that there is only two roads that lead into the southwest, which is the M5 and the A303. And it's a particular problem for the whole region. When we were discussing our wants as a whole peninsula, I made that front and central that actually all the roads in and around the peninsula really pale into insignificance when everything has to funnel through both the M5 or the 3A3 to get there, and that point I think I very much hammered home. So just to reassure you that these things are noted, are understood, and I am trying to make progress on those points.
Thank you for that, Richard. I'm going to wind this up just now. I think we've spoken enough about it. I live as far away from the M5 as probably anybody in this room, and yes, it's still an impact, on the 303, for example. So while agreeing with Dave, we ought to have councillors that are directly involved in the room. It's noted. And it's featured on social media and in the media generally when there's a hold up, because we know what chaos ensues. So thank you very much for that. I shall move on to item 7, which is budget proposals, fees and charges. Christian Evans, please, Head of Business Partnering, to introduce the item, after which we will have comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. So this paper was submitted to Executive Committee yesterday. An additional recommendation was added. This was: Executive endorse that the Section 151 officer will be submitting a non-binding request to MHCLG before the deadline of the 12th of December 2025 in respect of exceptional financial.
To interrupt you, sorry, it's come up as confidential on the screen. Is this are we supposed to be in session at this moment?
No, that should be fine.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Carry on.
Can you go to the next slide? That'd be good. So Clive is already in dialogue with the MHCLG regarding this, but a request in writing has to be submitted by each council for exceptional financial support. That's even though we don't actually know what the settlement is quite yet. So all recommendations were agreed, including the additional one, which was added in. So the paper shows that the current revised budget gap for 26-27 is 73.367 million. The majority of the savings for 26-27 come from adults and housing of 13.354 million. Community, place and economy are proposing savings of 2.432 million, and further details are contained in the slides as we move along. The total growth requests at this stage are 43.403 million. The majority of the requests are from people services, as you probably imagine, for demand and demography. The growth forms are not included within this report. We are still working on them. With regard to the fees and charges shown in table 4 of the report, we worked with an external partner who has a track record of helping local authorities optimise their income, and it's been very fruitful. The external partners work with services and finance to agree increases in fees and charges outside the standard uplift of CPI for September of 3.8%. Car parking, highways and waste will be reported in future reports. The full fees and charges is also shown in Appendix C. So from a scrutiny role perspective, so Executive opened the budget consultation yesterday, as you will probably be aware. So the scrutiny's role is to offer helpful feedback and highlight areas of further consideration, reflect on the impact of each proposal and suggest any of your own changes. The next steps, so all comments and feedback will be fed into the corporate and resources scrutiny, where all members are invited on the 5th of January. Corporate and Resources Scrutiny will also meet on the 28th of January. This meeting provides an opportunity for the committee to consider feedback from the budget consultation, outcome of the provisional settlement, which is due on the 17th of December, and finalise its findings and recommendations to executive on the 11th of February, ahead of the full council budget setting on the 25th of February. So moving on further down into the slide. So these are the savings proposed. There you go. So there's new savings proposed, as you can see there. There are 4 slides. Not sure exactly how you want to look at these, or happy to take any questions if you've seen the papers.
Thank you, Chris. There's a huge amount of information here. I hope members have had a chance to look at it in whatever detail they think is necessary. And I'm happy to open this to the floor now. Councillor Andy Dingwall, please.
Thank you, Chair. I had a couple of questions that kind of frame the rest of my thoughts afterwards. So if I ask those first, the first one is, are we able to scrutinise, there's been an external agency consultancy come in to provide advice. Are we able to scrutinise the advice that's provided there? And ideally review and understand the strategy behind the fees and increases, if indeed there was one, because I'm reading through the charge, I can't quite pick out what the strategy is. It looks like everything goes up 3.8%, presumably inflation, apart from the things that you feel can go up higher. And I couldn't work out what other thinking was behind that.
So the major proposals actually focus around, as you can imagine, car parking and waste and adult social care. So those are the main increases that we've worked. So the company that came in have a lot of local government experience, benchmarking against all other authorities as well, and working with other authorities. So they gave us or the services, indications of what fee levels that we could charge outside of the one. So they reviewed all of our fees and charges, and they pointed to areas where we thought we could optimize them further. So that's the work that happened within the services, certainly with Chris and his team around the CP&E area. And those you can see some of the challenges, and that's what's filtered through into these some of these savings.
Okay, thank you. So my feedback, Chair, if it's through you, is that's all this feels like. The numbers are going up. Optimization isn't what's happened here. It's everything's gone up by inflation, apart from these things which other people charge more for. So you could probably get away with charging more. Fees and charges, kind of like taxes, can be used to incentivize and drive behaviour that we want to see out in the county. We could say Somerset wants to become a more attractive to tourists, so we incentivise coffee shops and cafes by lowering the fees for pavement charges, which is something that's in the document here. But then on the other side of that, we are implementing commercial charges for holiday lets for waste collection. So we're disincentivizing certain elements over here. We're incentivizing certain elements over here. And it feels like none of this is joined up. None of it's pointing towards a strategy that is targeting anything for Somerset to become more attractive, to grow, or have a joined up approach to our fees and charges. So that's my feedback overall. It's not a specific point; it's a general note on the strategy behind it.
Okay, yeah, point made. Thank you very much. I've got Councillor John Cook Woodman, and then
Thank you very much.
Dave Mansell.
Plan, dear Lord.
And Mark.
Right. What I was going to say was, it's just on that Peninsula Transport contribution. I was wondering if I could ask Michael Dowd-Jones just to explain to the committee the sort of role that the subnational transport body does and the Peninsula Transport body does, because it is quite relevant in making our case for Somerset in what projects and what things get priority in the peninsula when we say this to governments. But I'm being quite wooden with it. I'm sure Mike's much more eloquent than I wonder if you'd mind, Mike, would you? And then may I come back, Chairman? Is that all right?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that, Chair. Yeah, so the Peninsula Transport is a body formed of Somerset Council with Devon, Cornwall, Plymouth and Torbay. Formed a few years ago with the intention of speaking with one voice for the investment needs of the region, and has been through several government growth deal processes where government has had money to invest in areas and has wanted the regions to come forward with their own views on priorities to make sure that money is spent on things that are important for the area. So as a body, it's really pushed hard for investments in the southwest, and has delivered a number of successful projects. Some of the projects like M5 Junction 25 improvements, for instance, and a number of other schemes in Somerset have come through that route. So we have traditionally funded a contribution towards that work. There's a small team employed to centrally by the transport body that we work with. So funds go into their work programme, and also government has traditionally topped that up as well. So we feel it's important, and we do have new grants coming in that we can fund this work from instead of the council's general fund. So this savings idea is not to reduce our contribution to that work, but simply to move it onto another grant and save the council's general fund some money. So that's what we're doing at this stage. Hopefully that's sufficiently succinct to get across the work of the group. Thank you, Chair.
And back to John on this.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mike. Yeah, no, that's extremely important that it is known the importance of that work and exactly what Somerset can get out of it, and also the lobbying fund to get investment in the southwest. And I'll bring an example on the train side. We're known as Diesel Island when it comes to trains, because we're from Bristol onwards. There's no electrification at all. And we're sort of the last and the left last. So these kind of bodies that speak with one voice for the peninsula are very important on this. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody was sort of aware of that in the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I've got Councillor Dave.
Thank you. I've just realised I've got an interest I should declare. It hadn't occurred to me earlier, but my son's working on a placement for Peninsula Transport at the moment, so just declare that. I had no plans to comment on Peninsula Transport, but realised I should mention that.
I think you can stay in the room.
I hope so. Okay, thank you. Okay, so on the sort of the budget paper, and I've got some specific questions, and clearly the purpose for us is to look at the impacts in the service areas that we cover. I do just think it should be noted on my reading of it, and the overview of the budget picture will be dealt with by corporate scrutiny, which will be meeting tomorrow, and will doubtless be doing that then. But my reading of how the budget's looking and what we've got in the way of savings so far to close the big gap that we're being told about, and in fact it actually looks like it's a gap that's gone down, good, but with various proposals it's a gap that could be going back up again as well. There's clearly going to be needs to be a lot more that's going to come into this budget, which at the moment we're unsighted on. We don't know what it might be, but there's, whatever it is, 70-90 million pounds worth of savings still to be found. I just feel we need to, be aware of that. I suspect nothing further can be said about it. Hopefully, I presume at January, although if anything more can be said about, what might be emerge in our service area, but I suspect we need to wait till January and see what people are working on. But at the moment, we're clearly unsighted on what may be coming through. So what we are sighted on, a few comments, perhaps in two groups, if that's helpful. I've got two on transport and then two on waste. So do the two transport ones, and they're really sort of just questions probing, what's involved. I will say the LED bit all sounds great. I hope there's no downsides to it, but it sounds absolutely the right thing to do. More energy efficiency and better ways of controlling street lights. So that looks like a positive. Now, when I say transport, it's under the sort of same section. It's actually broadband. A savings being taken, efficiency, it says £118,000 coming out of broadband delivery. Could I ask what that means? What's being removed from the service? Because I'm very mindful that broadband is still absolutely woeful and absolutely nothing of any, nothing concrete on addressing the problems in broadband in many rural areas. So a bit concerned to see that the budget's being taken out. So what are we losing there? And it's sort of a similar question on transporting Somerset projects. So if I'm reading it correctly, funding is being now taken out, or perhaps it's reduced, for a new transport planning system. So again, just wondering what is it that's being lost here?
I'll take those then. Paul Hickson would like to come back on that one.
Chairman, I can answer the specific questions regarding the broadband saving, which was asked about. So very happy to cover those. As a background here is that the council is an authority within the Connecting Devon and Somerset Partnership, which for a number of years has managed funds secured from government and other sources to commission contracted delivery of broadband infrastructure rollout. We as a council provide a contribution to the programme management costs associated with managing those contracts. The programme in its kind of contract management phase is running down now. So there are two remaining contracts and one of those will close very shortly. And the saving is in our programme management costs rather than in delivery. Specifically, the costs that the partnership needs to incur in terms of technical assurance, legal work and commercial advice are much lower than in previous years. So effectively, we're in a wind down stage in terms of that contract management, set against the context that government has changed the model in recent years. So those two contracts are effectively a legacy of the era where the government agency, BD UK, Broadband Delivery UK, looked to local authorities to contract delivery. Its core model now is its direct contracting with bodies under the Project Gigabit programme to deliver, and it isn't looking to local authorities to manage contracts and delivery in non-commercial areas at a kind of a local level. So the saving won't affect outcomes or our ability to manage the remaining close down of contracts that we have. It is, as outlined, an efficiency saving.
Okay, you have a second. It was a wet waste. Yes, okay.
I can pick up the second point, Chair. Yes, so the budget in transporting Somerset, there's £100,000 project budget at the moment, which was put in place specifically to implement a new IT system around transport bookings. So that work is largely complete. So we're able to give up some of the funding that we have in place for that. I would imagine the rest of it will probably be given up the following year once that project is complete. So it was in place for a specific purpose, which is now finished.
Okay.
Thank you. That sounds fine. Just a little bit of worry on the broadband. I am aware, although I've not sort of really seen it stated anywhere, that Somerset's right at the back of the queue on a massive national programme with Openreach. for them to roll out. And you can sort of tell because there's no dates coming out, nothing specific, and we've come in right at the end behind others because of the contract failures in Somerset. From what I'm seeing, and this doesn't apply in all areas, and in some areas there may be no option but to wait for the years for Openreach to eventually get to Somerset. But what is delivering in some areas is the rural programme where that's still open, and there's operators willing to take it on. Because they've got capacity. Otherwise, everything is being shunted off to Openreach to happen at some time in the distant future. So what I'm perhaps just a little bit concerned about, it may be okay, there is still a role for CDS from what I can see, and especially a role for CDS in trying to get things speeded up. And nearly the only way I can see that of happening is more areas coming into the rural voucher scheme where it's a possibility. So I do hope there's going to be capacity retained for that. Can there be reassurance? Paul?
Thankfully, I can provide that reassurance in as much as the saving has been calculated so that there remains provision for capacity within the council, a member of staff to act in a kind of advocacy role, engaging with BD UK and local communities on the broadband agenda. So the costs that have been taken out are those contract management and specialist advice for us, rather than capacity to kind of act in a strategic way in terms of the agenda.
Okay, sounds good. May I just probe a little bit further? There is some CDS staff with quite a lot of knowledge and the technical experience. Are they staying as well? Especially it's the engagement people I'm thinking of, if that's what their role is.
So in terms of the council's capacity, we will retain that engagement capacity. That's right. We're one member of staff.
And CDS as well, fund it, or who funds CDS? Microphone.
With apologies. I mentioned that the Connecting Devon and Somerset partnership over the next couple of years will wind down because it won't have any further kind of contract management to do, and that's why we need to retain capacity within the council.
Okay, right. Well, thank you for that. And you've gathered there's interest in the royal voucher. I have to say, in our area, that's the scheme that has delivered. But we've been fortunate because we've got a local company who's willing to do it. So, I really don't wish to see that capability lost. And in my view, it should be encouraged. But that's plenty on that. Okay, on waste. So let's have a look. So there's a proposal to charge holiday lets as a commercial waste collection, which sounds fair enough. Could I just ask how it is planned to be delivered, especially as it seems to be being shown that they introduce a charge, and so there seems to be an expectation that it's going to bring money in. My understanding is the holiday lets would have the option to go to a commercial provider. I'm sure that's the case. So it is the plan that they will be able to buy into the curbside collection service, which would be a fairly sensible thing if it's there. Is that what the plan is for that? That would be helpful to know. And perhaps slightly more minor, but it seems worth asking. There's going to be a charge for garden waste bins, and there's all sorts of things, here which, in an ideal world with the council being properly funded, we wouldn't be looking at. But okay, can understand it. So, there's a proposal for new people on the garden waste service to be charged £20 for a garden waste bin. I'm just slightly worried garden waste bins are going to start going walking a little bit more than they have done with this introduced. Let's hope not. So it slightly prompts the question: what happens if a garden waste bin is lost for whatever reason? Will people have to pay a bin to be replaced if it's lost?
Mike.
Thanks. Councillor Mansell. In terms of the commercial waste collections for holiday lets, what we are seeking to do is, as you suggested, is to align those onto the existing waste collection services that we provide. We don't feel that we're in a position to compete with other commercial operators, so these services would be aligned to those smaller businesses that whose waste requirements are basically aligned to our kind of commercial, to our domestic services. That makes sense.
Yeah, I think so. So they could be picked up on the same domestic service, but they would have to pay a fee for that.
Yeah, that's correct. In terms of the garden waste service, the worry about garden waste bins being lost or stolen, I don't necessarily share those concerns. At the moment, to access the garden waste service, you need to be a subscriber. Records are held on crew devices who know at which property, how many subscriptions each individual property has, and how many bins that they should be presented. So there are kind of controls in place there to prevent properties presenting more than one bin.
Thank you. Are you okay? Right, thanks. I know Liz Lachon's online, but I'll ask you to come in at the end, Liz, so that you may wish to field some of the other issues that are coming up. So it's on to Marcus Kravitz next, please.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask a question about fees and cost recovery and fiscal drag, and I think I'm going to leave that actually. I mean, all I would say is that obviously we've got services that have, so departments that have contracted, but the fees are in some cases the same, and therefore, although it's been suggested they go up with inflation, some aren't. It's actually how we're working that all out, but it's covered sort of in the report. I just wanted to actually then come in and say, I don't know whether it's on the forward plan, but I mean, the conversation, what Councillor Mansell just said about broadband, and bearing in mind that recently I knocked on a few doors and spoken to people in rural areas, is that actually, I don't know whether it's possibly an agenda item going forward that we deal with, look at, have a deeper delve into the broadband delivery, because there's too many stories I hear of people being told one thing by Openreach, and I say, well, why have they not come overhead? And they don't know they can come overhead. They're being, asked to dig a trench in a farmer's field. And there's too many little stories like that going on that need to be fed in somewhere, so we can call these suppliers out and say, why are you not delivering? I mean, why are you not delivering? I mean, I'm okay. I've got fibre to the premises, and I literally live at the end of the world. So I don't know quite, and I don't know whether we should bring that forward at some future meeting. I appreciate it could be a different scrutiny committee, could be, and we've probably got very full agendas, but it does change people's lives. And I'd like to think as a council, that's one of the things we like to try and do, is change people's lives for the better. And so I'll leave that. I'll dump the fees one, Christine, which you'd be quite pleased to know. But I think if we can just bring that in with regard to holiday lets, and I think that's about time too. I haven't had my household waste picked up for 10 years, but I do think we are in danger, because actually the commercial, I'm sure portfolio holder, who I'm really pleased is in the room, knows that there's maybe a distinct lack of competition in the commercial waste sector in Somerset. I mean, there's another company, I won't name names, but there's a smaller company trying very hard to break into the market, but it's very difficult. So I do think if we can, I can understand there needs to be a charge, because that's commercially, end of the day, it's commercial waste. But I do think there might be a small opportunity, and I appreciate we don't want to compete with private contractors. But again, it's about making it easier for businesses and small business as single holiday lets. So whatever we can do, because I wouldn't wish them to have to go down a full commercial contractor route, because it can be quite annoying.
Thank you, Marcus. Paul, on the issue particularly of a broadband and bringing it to the committee, do you have any comment?
We can very happily bring an update on the kind of the context as things stand, the kind of remaining delivery that I talked about through the CDS programme, and the picture for Somerset in the context both of commercial delivery, which is really important, and the government's approach, which is not without valid criticism, as Councillor Mansell kind of just touched on lightly, in terms of the Project Gigabit programme for areas that are hard to reach in terms of connectivity. So yes, can look into that and work with Jamie on timetable.
Thank you. Yeah, we haven't had an update for quite a long time. I remember we did have one probably a couple of years ago. Things seem to have changed quite a bit since then. In which case, unless Dawn, Liz, okay, thank you very much. Councillor Lashon, online, please. And I know you've posted some updates in the chat box. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. That was my first point, that I just wanted your committee to be aware of the policy that we have for the first time on fees and charges. I went to executive yesterday and will be part of budget setting. So there is time for committee members to look at that policy and to respond. I wanted to just say a few other things, if I may, Chair, that the LED on street lighting will be connected to a capital bid, because there's obviously significant cost in changing the remaining street lights to LED and putting in the central controls for the first time. And then on the balancing of the budget, where we're now at 73 million, we're still working on many things. We're still waiting for government to respond on a number of things. The fair funding review and the grants that Somerset will get, we don't have that yet. We don't have business rates yet. We don't have how government expect us to deal with the accumulated deficit on the dedicated schools grant. So that's the SEND deficit. The government have said they will take that centrally, the cost centrally from April 28 onwards, but they have not given any guidance yet on how councils like Somerset Council are expected to deal with the accumulated deficit, which will be huge by then. And we don't have anything yet on exceptional financial support, although you have already heard from Christian Evans that we have to submit a non-binding bid before we have the provisional settlement for local government. So they come the wrong way round. There are other things that we are able to work on, and that they are all things that will close the gap, and they're things like the collection fund surplus on council tax and business rates, council tax base increase, and also the cost of borrowing after we've done a full review of our capital programme. Because in recent years, members will recall, we've seen quite a bit of slippage in the capital programme, so we're aiming to be more accurate for 26-27 and exactly what can be achieved and therefore what borrowing will be needed. So I hope that's helpful, Chair.
That is indeed. If anybody's got any further questions or comments, as Liz is with us at the moment. No? Well then, thank you very much for that discussion. Thank you, Chris, for bringing it forward. To summarise then, we've had a reasonably good discussion, I think, on the questions raised, particularly in areas of policy and motive for the budget, which I think Councillor Lation has gone some way to answering. Specific questions on holiday lets, waste, broadband were addressed, and the idea of bringing it forward, the broadband issue, to a future meeting, I would agree with, bearing in mind, of course, the agenda is pretty packed, and we do have structural changes to scrutiny in the new year, so it may not be in front of this particular group. And thank you very much for summarising some of the issues, Liz, and coming in. So we are now ready to move on. I see people have sort of taken informal breaks, which I might do. So I think perhaps, given the nature of the agenda, we'll go on to the next item, which is 8, draft climate vision document. James Dival, Head of Service for Climate and Natural Environment, to introduce this item, please. James, thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. So today we're presenting the draft climate and ecological emergency vision document. It has come to scrutiny, I think, probably about 12 months ago, and something which we've paused, I think, really to look at some of the opportunities around so alignment with other strategies, Environment Agency, Natural England, for instance, and obviously the forthcoming local nature recovery strategy. So there's been a pause for a reason, but we're in a good position now to bring this forward, to present it to scrutiny today, and to ultimately ask the committee to consider the proposed vision, to seek feedback, and to ask for your support in terms of the adoption. So you will have the detail is within the report. You will have a copy of the climate and ecological emergency vision document as well. The aim really, and quite simply, is to provide that illustrative vision really into the long-term aims and objectives and ambitions really of Somerset Council, and hopefully its partners and communities as well. We want to look to that sort of utopia goals, you know, of where we see our actions and our strategies aiming to achieve. So the outcomes that we're looking to achieve through the vision document, and obviously the number of strategies and policy papers which sits underneath of it. We're also using it as a bit of a call for sight, call to action, rather than a call for sight. That's a never work stream. So a call to action really is trying to work with our partners and our communities, because this is not an action that we can do alone. We have to be working collectively with our communities and with our partners and broader organisations to hopefully achieve this, you know, long term. It is an emergency that we're committed to, and needs to happen, quite frankly. So we're hoping to deliver at pace, and ultimately the vision document is to sit above some of the strategies that we already have in place. So we have a climate and ecological emergency statement. We have the current climate strategy. So this would sit above that strategy. The needs assessment of it, the strategy, the rationale of why there is a climate emergency hasn't changed. So we see that as principle, the strategy is still relevant. What we've tried to actually do is pull a number of those key outcomes together. We've also tried to actually provide a framework for a number of the strategies and policy papers which sits underneath that across climate, our water services and our nature services. And then underneath those will be our service delivery functions, whether that will be within my own services or broadly across the council. Sorry, just moving on the page. So one of the actions from scrutiny has been to provide an update on where we are. We've had a number of update reports over the last 12 months of the energy investment plan. There was an update as well attached there on national landscapes management plans we've had presented. So this is really to try and give you a high level overview on where we actually are, the work that we're continuing to deliver at pace. I'm not going to go through word for word because there's a lot of detail in the slides, but obviously no doubt there'll be questions at the end, and we can go into a bit more detail in particular areas, as well as we've got some additional slides to send around at the end as well. So the key point, first one, local nature recovery strategy. I think this was at committee last meeting, and we've just discussed earlier. It'll be going to executive in March, finishing the consultation period now, and that will provide quite a key foundation framework strategy for our nature recovery actions that we'll be moving forward. I've tried to add in here as well about some of the other work that the nature recovery and partnerships team are focused on in terms of our tree strategy deliverables, biodiversity net gain work streams. There's a lot of asset mapping at this moment in time in terms of identifying what protected sites that we have across Somerset. If you think 5 councils emerging into one, there's been a huge work stream of trying to identify where they actually are. And that has formed part of the local nature recovery strategy, but also some of our own ongoing work streams in terms of our green estates management plans and what our Countryside Rangers and their volunteer teams supporting, as well as the ecological assessments of local wildlife sites and the work that we're doing with CERC and the Local Nature Partnership as well. We've developed a new designation process for local nature reserves, and we're just going through the final steps of a pilot programme, I think with Ash Parish Council at the moment, just going through the first steps, and if that's successful, hopefully we'll be able to roll that out in the new year. There's a lot of ongoing work with Somerset Local Nature Partnership. We've got the first consideration report and the 102 report of our biodiversity duties under the Environment Act coming to scrutiny, I think, in February and March as well. So we can talk through that in a bit more detail, as well as there's a broad range of activities that the team are delivering really around outreach activities and community events attendance. The climate team, again, we've had some updates already within the energy investment plan already. The carbon baseline was presented last meeting as well, providing us with that initial footprint of our annual review moving forwards. We have got some slides as well, as I've mentioned, on this particular area around our decarbonisation agenda that we can pass around at the end, and with the minutes from the agenda. So, Steph, I'll send that across to you. I will do. Somerset Council, in terms of the energy tariff, there's work, and again, the proposal is going to executive on this particular case, as well as. I think there's a broad, well, I don't think, I know there's a lot of work with the team are delivering with other services. So I'm talking, a lot from first hand in terms of Mark and the team and the climate strategy and partnerships team, but he is working actively with other services and partners across Somerset Council. And outside of that, we've mentioned, today about highways. There's a lot of work around the decarbonisation agenda, which I'll pass on to in the next slide. But around resilience and adaptation, that's an area that we're trying to grow our understanding about how we can be a more resilient and adapted Somerset Council and Somerset, especially as we know climate is not disappearing. We need to be moving towards a strategy in this direction. So we've started work on a roadmap. We're starting to work with agencies like the Blue Light Services on what that could actually look like for Somerset Council. It's going to be a huge piece of work and something that we're starting to look now onto the horizon and the way forward on that particular area. As I've said, sort of more broadly across the council, highways and transport have already been very active in this particular area. We've highlighted just a few areas here. So it's not just the climate strategy team which are delivering. They are working alongside other services like highways and transport. Our estates team, we're actively looking at how we can be more proactive in terms of decarbonisation of our estates. We've spoken about electric vehicle charges in previous meetings. So there's a lot of work already happening and continuing to happen. Just lost my page, apologies. National landscapes, another one of the key areas around the nature recovery programme, but also in terms of designation and protected landscapes in Somerset. We have 5. We had a presentation probably about 6 months ago now from the National Landscapes team introducing the management plans. We're close to an adoption period. I think we're waiting for Quantox and Mendips are going through the final consultation periods of adopting those management plans. Dorset, Blackdown and Cranbourne Chase have been adopted, and we've also supported the endorsement of Exmoor National Parks plan as well. So there's a lot of progressive work here. The team are active as well in terms of both nature and climate, supporting the work streams within those management plans as well. Green Estates has been a fantastic success in a short amount of time. We've got 22 local nature reserves across the county. It's been a service which was, I guess its birth was in South Somerset around the Ham Hill Chard Reservoir, but we've expanded at pace to be able to address the challenges of 22 local nature reserves and creating new volunteer teams in those sites. So currently working, as I mentioned already, in Ham Hill Country Park, Chard Reservoir, Wilstock and Stockmore, Barrow Dunes, Apex Park. eco meads, and there's a few smaller sites as well. Events programs are starting to move forward. There's going to be a new website created, and there is a huge, amazing volunteer army which is supporting the team in these areas. Alongside of that has been the exciting creation of not just a new visitor centre and a cafe at Ham Hill Country Park, but a broad range of programmes from interpretation, new walk routes, complete a complete invested program from the Heritage Funds. We've been really lucky about working alongside them in partnership to develop the Ham Hill site. It is a protected site, it's a triple SI, it's got local wildlife sites on it as well, and it is a national monument site as well. So it's one of our flagship sites, but the learning we've taken from Ham Hill, we're really keen to try and replicate further across other nature reserves as well. I think handover for that site is tomorrow. So I'm up there. Hopefully we will have a visitor centre open within the next couple of weeks. Ecology Service, they've done an amazing job with the increased work streams around biodiversity net gain, the work around phosphates, minerals and waste. The small team have been working effectively with the planning service to try and improve their standards to tackle the backlog, as well as to support a number of the other work streams that we're talking about, like the first consideration report, the 102 report around our biodiversity duty. We're also keen as well to use their expertise to help with some of the baselining and inspections of our local wildlife sites. So we don't own them all, but if we talk about local wildlife sites in Somerset, we have around 2,000 of them. So there is a collaborative partnership approach with the likes of CERC, the Somerset Environment Record Centre, and the partners associated to that to ensure that we've got those baseline reports and we're delivering on our duties.
Yes.
One of the places was mentioned that I'm a member of an organisation that uses that particular lake. So I have
I think you might just limit your comments to what would be reasonable in that circumstances, Jamie. Yeah, I don't think it's a major issue.
I think that if otherwise we'd all probably be members of organisations which use
quite possibly, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
I just wanted to make
it's best to let us know.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. All right.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of our water services, you know, Flood and Coastal Services is working incredibly hard at the moment to not only deliver on their planning functions, but to also update a number of the statutory functions and duties around our shoreline management plans. We're working with the Environment Agency and local communities to see how we can update these and to look at the impacts of coastal risk. We've got a new flood risk strategy in development, as well as, again, similar to the natural assets, trying to map and ensure that we have effective management and scheduling of works around our flood and coastal assets register. So that's a piece of work that we're working alongside the other flood risk management authorities to ensure that we've got that that register to the best capacity we could possibly do, and there is a collective approach to actually delivering on that. We have the Section 19 reports and investigations. I think I've promised Scrutiny the other side of Christmas, so we'll have an update on all of those Section 19s. But for us, it's also how we move forward, you know, from those investigation reports is, you know, it's that so what questions in terms of resilience measures to support our communities, to aid our communities to be more resilient, but also see how we can mitigate against flooding in the future. It's not a short-term solution, it's a long-term strategy that we need to come to, but there are short-term measures about how we can support communities and residents in that particular area. Coastal protection, we're looking at developing a coastal vision along with multiple communities and agencies. And then there's a number of functional areas of the flood and coastal area that I've highlighted just below. Somerset River Authority, we've reported on a number of times of the great work that they continue to do. They are working at additionality. That's the key bit that I have to mention here. They're not the risk management authority like ourselves or our partners like the Environment Agency, Wessex Water, and the IDB, but they do an amazing job of working collectively with us about identifying additional resources and actions on the ground. Many things have already been developed and continue to develop through the grants programme, and obviously with community engagement and flood action programmes. There's a few other bits and pieces, obviously, which is tinkering on the edge, I think, of my service teams, but they are still continuing to support, including Bridgewater Barrier, the Agratas Gravity planning responses, Cheddar 2 Reservoir, all work streams that the teams are actively working in. Mark and the carbon team are working with our financial colleagues around the social value view and seeing if there are pilots outside of Somerset Council where we can work with organisations to see how we can come up with solutions in alignment to our broader strategies. Collaborative working with economic development as well, drone usage and looking at new technologies, not just drones, but satellite imagery, telemetry, to see how we can be more effective within our business as usual. Is a critical action that we need to look at, because with smaller teams and a large area of Somerset, we need to be working smarter and working to the data available to our teams. So a huge piece of work looking at data and intelligence and bringing that forward there. So a lot in there. It is headlines. I'm happy to talk through particular programmes because I know there are keen interest in this particular area, but it's a jigsaw puzzle that I'm trying to pull together. This jigsaw puzzle has outcome alignment across all of my services, but with other services across Somerset Council. We are trying to install that monitoring and performance management within our service plans from the start, as well as continue to influence and align work streams, across other services in the council and with external partners and communities. It's close to the end of the year as well, so I wanted to sort of just have a bit of a recognition of the efforts of the team. They have been phenomenal. We've had a tough year, I think. We're in a really good place right now, I think, in terms of stability. We're looking at horizon, and you can see right now what they have delivered, but what we are starting to look forward to grow and to develop further into the future. So I really wanted to sort of highlight the efforts that they are doing and continue to do, but also an opportunity to thank you all in terms of the Climate and Scrutiny Committee. It's been, I think, good for me since I've come into the post. It's been a great tool for my team to learn how to work with a committee like this as well. It's not here to cause problems, but to actually challenge what we're actually doing to help grow our programmes and to take it to hopefully the next steps, which both benefit their council and the community. So end of the year, I thought I say a thank you, and then we look forward to 2026. Thank you, Jeff.
James, I think you've softened them up suitably there with and thank you very much for that report. I noticed a certain hint of hysterical laughter crept into your voice when you spoke about bringing another report to this committee in January. No doubt your workload is it has to be recognised. Thank you very much. Right, well, let's get on with the questions then, and let's not give him an easy ride like he's trying. Henry Hobhouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a number of points, and are just the proposal to change the nutrient neutrality is hopefully going to free up some quite significant funds. How are your team planning to use those funds if they get freed up and the government allows us to change their usage, with reference to the renewal of the levels and moors damage that's been done primarily by the farming industry?
It's a big first question to come out. I think there's a number of key. I mentioned earlier around governance review. We have got the local nature recovery strategy, which will form an area of our work stream. So the work underneath Steve Jury and the Nature Partnership team, there will be elements there which that will align very naturally to. We have potentially the support for the Greater Sedgemoor landscape recovery programme again, which will cover those areas. The area where I've questioned around why there's a need for a governance review is currently underneath me. There is a flood and coastal service. It's not a water quality or a water management service. So there are functions which sits naturally within the climate and natural environment service. It's just understanding what alignment I need to do with other services across communities and place, but more broadly across Somerset Council. So there's a conversation internally with senior management. There's a lot of potential. I'm not going to necessarily be able to give you the answers of what we can actually do with that. It needs to be carefully managed and reviewed moving forward, and will align to all the climate and place, the climate and natural environment service plans. I hope that makes sense. It's a holding platform, probably answer at this moment in time.
It makes a lot of sense. The next question is more difficult. The EA have designated 4 new water reservoirs on the levels and moors. And they claim that they are going to be able to hold a lot more water. I'm asking the question, has anyone looked at the damage that holding that water on the levels and moors is going to do to the wildlife?
I'm unsure is the answer there. I know we are looking at creating new forums with our risk management partners to work more collaboratively and closer with one another moving forward. We know that there is greater alignment that we need to do, and we already work very closely with them. But in terms of business as usual alignment of strategies and work programs, that is something that we're quite keen to look at. That would be something, I guess, that we would align and look at within our service plans.
I suppose just to say as well that those are major infrastructure projects, and that the council, as a local planning authority, will have a significant role in working with the proposer of those schemes. I believe there is a planning performance agreement that will be in place to support the detailed works and studies relating to various impacts. So we will work with our planning service colleagues and provide specialist advice through the experts in James's team as those kind of discussions kind of move on.
Thank you very much. I've got Councillor Steve Ashton next, please.
Yes, my query is about community energy projects. I was wondering if you could expand on the ones that you've helped deliver, the ones that you propose to deliver, and the type of help you're giving to community energy projects.
So I don't have the detail here. I mean, Cara Nadina, one of the climate officers, would be the best person to be able to provide that. I could probably ensure that I get that across to you. We have got additional slides as part of the feedback to be able to pass on there. In terms of the community energy work, we are looking to develop a community energy network. I think there's been some funding already created for one of the partners to lead on that first discussion, but we believe that forum needs to exist across Somerset to try and share best practice, to be able to signpost the funding opportunities available, and to highlight opportunities that we've got across Somerset, as key actions around the energy investment plan.
Thank you, Steve. Next up, Dave Mansell.
Thank you. Speakers before keep queuing me up on need to declare an interest. This one is on my register of interest, so it's not hidden. But I think I should mention, I wasn't going to comment on it in any way, but I am a member of a number of community energy schemes and an investor, but as a member these days. So a few comments, and I will absolutely go with where James was getting us to at the end, but I'm afraid it looks like I'm going to start with the positive, but I will get a bit more challenging. But yeah, well done. Yeah, I know you guys are working hard and you are doing a lot of good projects. Can see that. It does feel like the nature side of things is progressing in a pretty good way. You know, I feel quite happy and can see lots of things happening there and good projects both for the council in the community, and it is really good to see you know what's been developing there. And you're a small team, and I'm in no doubt that you know you're all doing good stuff, and I can see that too. Now the reports on the vision, I don't feel excited. I mean, I don't disagree with the vision. It's okay, but you know what we're meant to be doing here is responding to what were identified as climate and ecological emergencies, and especially the climate side of things. I have concerns. It was September 2024 when it last came to us as a draft, and it's you know moved on a little bit, but it's much the same as it was over a year ago. So it's taken that time to come on, and it's 6 years now. I've not worked it out exactly, but it's 6 years or so since we all passed the various motions and so on, and to sort of see this document as now what's coming, as you see, I can't feel excited. It's so high level. It's nearly nothing. You know, it is something, and it's there, but you think, what's going to happen as a result of this? What's different to what we've had before? And I just can't see, you know, quite what it's achieved. But it's a good looking thing. It is something that we want to have. There is an aspect which I mentioned last time concerns me, that it feels like it's trying to shift a focus. In fact, you know, it really looks like it's shifting a focus onto individuals and communities to act, which is going to need to happen, but that is not the solution. It's part of the solution, and it is important. I'm not saying it's not, but we're a council. We're part of local government. We're meant to be about how the system works, and I feel we're not working at that level, and that's what we should be doing, as well as working with individuals and communities. And for me, this is starting to feel like a bit of a failing. Now, that said, we are clearly doing work, and there are good projects. Many of them, though, have been there for quite some time and not yet sort of moved on, especially on the climate things. I think if we're honest, they're progressing a bit slowly, and it's because we've not got the team to do it. And again, this has been a constant theme. We've not got a corporate team to help drive this on, or necessarily the level of knowledge necessary in the service areas. Absolutely, the whole council needs to work, but for me, the corporate team is not at a high enough level within the organisation. We've got a good manager, but you've got one hell of a lot on your plate, too much in my view. And I think we need a bigger team to be driving this forward in the way that it needs and should be done. And perhaps to sort of conclude, I feel this most comes out in what this is meant to be about, and what the original motions were all about was moving the whole world and our part of it towards carbon neutrality, net zero, keeping the global warming within a certain level. And that needs big action. It needs a lot of planning. It needs a lot of moving forward. And I'm just not seeing our contribution to that. Now, I think we have created a bit of a problem, and probably, you know, what we were doing early on, there was a little bit wrong, and I think it's still there. And some of us have been constantly trying to draw attention to this, that we've ended up confusing ourselves in targets and what we're working to, and in officers, what's guiding them. 2030, 2050, trying to move sooner. We've ended up without having guidance on where we're going, and we're not really working on a path towards it in a meaningful way, from what I can see. But this committee, as we talked about earlier, has made a recommendation. Personally, I would have really loved to constructively contribute to that. And I've attended task and finish groups which were meant to do it, but unfortunately others didn't turn up. So we couldn't really progress it. But I would really love to be working positively and constructively with others on this. And I hope those opportunities will come. This is, a lot of what's motivated me to get involved and do this sort of stuff. So, okay, but we need to do more is I think the message I would pass on. But well done for all that you're doing with all the difficulties that the council now faces, which we are all painfully aware of. So you are doing a good job. Well done.
Do you want to respond to any of that, James?
Yeah, I think the first bit around passing, the ask to our communities, I don't think that's what the intention is trying to do. I think it's trying to say that we need to do things in collaboration and partnership. As Somerset Council, we need to show that leadership. We need to be able to step up from the front and be able to, and I think part of a lot of the work streams of what we're moving forward on is focused on Somerset Council rather than the Somerset agenda. And that's more to try and showcase what we are delivering, what we need to be doing more on in terms of the climate and ecological emergency. So I think the intention of the document is trying to frame a lot of the work which has already happened, like the energy investment plan. We've had the climate, strategy document. It's trying to provide that umbrella document to frame it all together to say, what is that end goal that we're aiming towards? What are we trying to achieve? And really, as I said, that call to action is both internal and external. So the great work that Mark does and the team is about also trying to influence other services to see how we can heighten the importance of our decarbonisation agenda. We've highlighted on a couple of slides there the great work that the transport and highways team have done, and there's been a lot of work as well with the blue light services along there. So it is a small team. Would we like to do more? Well, yes, of course. But we're in an environment at the moment which is quite challenging at times, but we are progressing. There's a lot of detail within some of the actions that we're doing within those service delivery plans, that we have that idea of what we need to do. It's just trying to be able to influence the right people moving forward. A lot has worked in the natural environment area. It is in some ways easier to move forward. There's a lot of active partners in that area. We have some active teams, and the legislation around the Environment Act, and our biodiversity duties enables us in some ways to move that forward at a greater pace. It's just a challenging balancing act. I think with decarbonisation, it's quite expensive as well. So some of the key actions that we need to do to address our scopes 1, 2, 3 does require quite large scale investment as well. I don't know if Mark, you want anything. I'll pass over to Mark.
I was just going to kind of come and recognise the kind of lack of progress in terms of presenting information here, which is why we now actually are sitting in the back of the room. Hannah has joined about 5 weeks ago, so instantly we have more capacity, and we've really been moving forward quite rapidly on. We presented the baseline in October. We already have a much better grip on how we will be updating that for the scrutiny committee. That will probably in reality come back here sort of September next year for the current financial year. There'll be a lot more detail in that, which will help us then, as you say, kind of focus on those large areas of emissions within the council. The other thing that we will be doing is we'll be producing an annual report on progress, which will pick up some of those concerns that you have around the actual individual activities, which we haven't had the capacity to do before. So there will be a clear kind of list of actions and activities that have undergone, are taking place, and also an update on projects that are kind of progressing outside of the council. So James has mentioned the work that we're currently looking at, transport decarbonisation group, working with some of the highway contractors, focusing on decarbonising a kind of heavy fleet across Somerset, which is getting some traction. So there's lots of actions and activities going on. Like you say, we probably just haven't been able to kind of present them here in a very clear, transparent way. Some of the information that James will send out after this has got some updates on some of those actions and activities as well.
Thank you. Come back on that.
If I may, thank you for that, and that's helpful and good to hear. So yeah, annual report, that clearly will be helpful in the further baseline. Could I say one thing? It would be good if sort of early versions of that could be brought to us, and if we're able to, as a scrutiny, able to make some early suggestions of things we think may be helpful. I'm sure we want to be constructive and help, but it would be quite nice to hear what you're planning, and maybe if we could make some suggestions. You may well have it all under control, but it's nice to get something at an earlier stage rather than a finished document and say, here, this is what it is. It's nice if we've got perhaps a chance to see it at an earlier stage and maybe say, is there anything we can do in this area? So as a suggestion. I perhaps will ask, when it came last time, and I did mean to mention this, I missed it. We had action plans, we had draft action plans alongside the vision. We haven't got them this time. I think they're still to come, although it's not quite clear, but perhaps I should just ask that. And I think this is, it's the action plans that we've been missing and really want to see.
Yeah, I can provide that. That's a simple. We've tried to simplify it because the action plans was looking at the whole council, and we put it into an Excel style format under our service delivery plans. Who is the lead? How we moving that forward? It's still to be developed through communities of practice, and I think that's the reason we just haven't sort of shared it at the moment, is trying to align some of those work streams. There's a lot of, as I said, a lot of active work already with housing and retrofit and with our transport and highways team. We're just still trying to embed those service plans more broadly across the council, and so it's just trying to find the right time, like you say, to pitch, to provide awareness, that transparency, but also to evidence progression. And I think it's that happy medium of trying to be able to do that, really. So quite happy to share that, but I also know there'll be a lot of questions of, so when is that going to happen, or what are you going to do about that? And that is part of the balancing act that a small team has at this moment in time about what is going to be our key priorities over a very big area of work streams. We understand what we need to do. We've got a plan of action in place. It's being able to deliver that at pace.
Okay, let's move on. I've got Councillor Andy Dingwall, and then I've got Councillor Dawn Denton.
Thank you, Chair. It was my question was a quick one around, as we start to move this from strategy into, as you've been discussing, into actions. The strategy very rightly impacts all elements of the council and encourages all the teams within the council to work in this way. Has the work been done to understand what resource requirements that needs from all of those individual teams, what extra workload it's going to put in their direction, and are there any particular teams that are causing you any nervousness around being able to implement the strategy here?
I think the vision document, and again the strategy which is in place there, is that the vision document hopefully will reinforce the importance of the strategy and the work that we've already committed to. There are services, as I said, we're already moving forward on, and that service plan, I think that was linked back to that last action around the service delivery plans, will actually start aligning hopefully with more broadly across the council. I don't think there's any councils which are causing council services which is causing blockers. I think it's just being able to influence priorities. I think, as I said, we're forming into a stage where things are more stable. We're starting to look ahead in terms of horizon scanning those development opportunities around transformation programs, and I think other council services are starting to become more in that space as well. So I see 2026 as a real growth area of starting to work more collaboratively across the council and moving forward. That's where the fingers crossed are, anyway.
Thank you.
think to support what James has just said, I think the transparency of the data around the baseline, which to be fair, services not had presented back to them, is part of that challenge. It's before the quality of the data when we did the baseline was just after the 5 councils had merged. So we had systems, 5 different systems reporting, multiple formats of data, gaps in the data. Things have moved on quite significantly in the last sort of 18 months, which is why now we're looking at a lot more quality data. So once we've kind of got a better handle on the kind of the transparency in the process for collecting the data, we will then be able to share that information back to those service areas. And the other area which I'm already working with is working with procurement colleagues on future tenders of contracts. So we're starting to build into those future contracts the concerns around, like, how will you deliver your this service for us in a lower carbon, more sustainable way? Obviously, with the challenge of not recognizing, like James said, that sometimes that does attract a higher cost. So there's that balance between, you know, are you going to use like low carbon vehicles? Are you going to be thinking about your depots and how you're operating? We can start to build some of that into future contract requirements as well. But like you say, the key is to give those service areas that information to start with, because they're probably not even aware. You know, there'll be certain areas that flag up as high carbon emitting that they don't recognise yet because they've not been kind of presented that data.
Councillor Dawn Denton, and before you start, can I say thank you for coming today, even though I gave you a lift, but thank you for turning up and replacing. And it occurs to me, we are woefully short of representation of women on this committee.
Thank you for noticing.
Woefully short, and maybe when reorganisation happens, that might be taken into consideration.
Okay, I'm okay to carry the burden. I just wanted to thank you very much. I really this is really good reading. I really get really excited about some of the projects that you're doing, and I know that Froome is really excited about being mentioned in the nature recovery strategy. They were pretty chuffed with that. I think my whole thing is about bringing the community along for sustainability and sustainability. So being able to ensure that the public take on these projects themselves, I think, is a really important part of the work. And I think, as Andy mentioned, getting it some of these things embed across the council rather than just the weight of your own team, specifically with limited capacity, you know, and I know that the capacity is increasing, or you know, you're feeling like you're in a better place. Previously, when I was here, we had a discussion about the target for 2030, and I don't know if that is being reviewed or if that is an achievable goal. And if it is achievable at this point, how on track do we feel we are with that? And is that something that needs to be mentioned in the overall vision? But also, how can we measure with, you know, the KPIs for the public, for ourselves, just for us to feel that we can see the progress that the council is making in all of these areas?
Thank you. I'm sure Mark can come back in around the data in a minute, because one of the key areas we're really trying to develop is transparency around our data, the carbon baseline and the dashboard technology that we're looking to develop. So we'll show that progress in our scopes 1, 2 and 3. I think the action around the timelines, it was something we discussed at the start of the meeting around maybe a recommendation from the scrutiny to go into the vision report to executive. I think there was an old recommendation that I'll speak to the support team around ensuring that I get the wording right for the executive report, so I can add that question in there. In terms of progression and how we're moving forward, that's the challenge. I feel that scopes 1 and 2, with the right wind and resources and support behind us, then I really do feel that we can do some real progression in that area. I haven't mentioned as well with waste, there's been a lot of work, you know, linking in with waste and their future waste strategies and how we're looking at decarbonising those areas as well. So there is a lot of work, and I think there's a keenness generally across the council to be able to support. It is about managing priorities and aligning priorities, and that's what Mark is working really hard on at the moment to try and get a foot into everyone's door, to try and make sure that climate is actually at top of everyone's priority moving forward, or there's that alignment at least as well. I think that's answered the question. Any other questions?
No, just about the 2030. I know there was going to be a review about that date, and we did bring that up before, so I was just wondering if there was any shift on that and if it's a realistic date, because it's only 4 years away.
It's something I know has been passed to the executive, and again through that report we can ask that question with the climate vision again to executive.
Thank you very much. Henry wants to come in again, and then I'll wind up.
To add one thing, this is no problem for you, James. Marcus has got his hand up too. Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Marcus. Yes.
There is a website called Flood Mary, which has come to my notice due to the work that I've been trying to do after the May 23 flooding. She has been flooded 4 times. She has put together a booklet that explains to you how to defend your house. And it is the primary responsibility of every householder to defend their own house. And we don't actually say it enough. And the work that she's done, I find particularly interesting, and would suggest to every councillor here that they actually engage with that particular website.
I was just going to say, I think the SRA engagement team have been working with that information around signposting. As you say, it's a really good website. It's really informative for local communities, and I think a lot have benefited from that. We're aware as well. I think it come back to Councillor Denton's point around community engagement and that culture change. It's an area of the vision document and our work streams that we're quite keen to encourage more. So it's an area we would like to move forward on in terms of community engagement and working with our communities handing out on these solutions.
Thank you very much, Marcus Kravitz, and I've got Helen Kay online.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you. Yeah, it is. I echo Councillor Bass. I said it is. Yeah, it's very detailed. I thought the other slides are also very detailed. In fact, there's an awful lot on there that I could probably ask questions on each one. But I'm sticking to page 203 at the moment, and there's a couple of points. Well, it's about changing. I mean, I think this is what other people are touching on about community, but it's about changing behaviours. It's also about changing lives. There's a couple of things you talked about, consulting parish councils in some of the things up there. Can I just add, can we not forget about the division members? Because many divisions have many parish councils, and not all parish councils are necessarily thinking the same. So where they're representing the whole of the division and not just an individual parish council. I mean, funny enough, I look back and page, is it 5A on the old Somerset Western Taunton's one, which I can talk about because I was a bit involved in. And I look at the things there and I think, well, we talk about encouraging more cycling, etc. Well, actually, whatever happened to the e-scooter projects and things like that? And they, there'll be some people who thought they were the devil's work, e-scooters, and when they appeared in West Somerset. And then we talk about, I think the big losses, things like electric bikes and the use of them. And then we talk about cycle paths. And I don't want to mention the half of the cycle path that we have between Dunstan and Minehead. Save that for the next item. But I do think that, we change those behaviours, and when we talk about decarbonisation, well, actually, is it better to decarbonise the current fleet? Which actually, I went on one of the electric buses the other day, and although for me the most exciting thing was being able to charge my phone on it, which I'm sure actually most people don't care that it was electric, but my phone had enough battery when I got off it, and I should think the teenagers who use them, it's probably the best thing. That's talk about changing lives. We've changed lives there. No, they can't use the excuse the battery was dead anymore. But then actually, would that be better where you decarbonise a fleet, or would it be better to put on a scheduled bus service from Minehead to Bridgewater and take some traffic off the roads that way? So how do we get that? How do we get that balance? And hang on, bear with me. And I'm looking at the other things on page 13. We talk about house building. Well, you only have to look at some of the new houses that are going up now, and you think, is that the best they can do? And that goes to the big house. Maybe I'm aiming that mainly at the bigger house builders, because actually you look at some of the smaller house builders. Actually, just from externally, you think, well, at least they've tried a bit. Where you look at some of the big house builders, and it's like it's 2025, and if I can build it out of Lego, then it's not good enough. And then we look at the energy side of things, and of course, we then only have to look at it's all very commendable, but then you only have to look at the hysteria that happens when that we're all going to starve to death because someone wants to put 2 acres of an agricultural field into a solar farm, and the world is going to end. And we've all seen it. We've all seen it in various applications that suddenly food security is the new thing to stop a planning application you don't like. I appreciate that there is value in it, but I think some of the responses sometimes are quite hysterical. How we do that and how we deal with changing that behaviour now. And actually, I assume I wasn't the only one. I was on the members' briefing for a certain new battery factory, and I'm not wrong when I say there's not one solar panel on a roof. Was anybody else on that briefing? Yeah, and you sit there gobsmacked. I mean, I'm sorry, they're building a factory for electric batteries. They're going in electric cars to help climate change, and no architect somewhere thought that's a very big roof there. And it's like, how do we change that now to stop things like that occurring in a year's time rather than that? And I mean, it is a good vision. I love a good vision as well. But just how we deal with those things that are happening immediately. And I think that probably pulls back to Councillor Mansell's action plan, as you talked about, wasn't it? I think I've sort of covered everything I wanted to cover, Chair.
You want to come back on any of that, James?
I think it's just highlighting some of the challenges that we have with influencing internal and external. You mentioned about the battery. So we provided comments. We can only do, our task in terms of our specialist teams providing, planning responses and supporting communities in the area. There are some things that we cannot enforce necessarily from our area. So it's about a greater collaboration and working with, our planning functions with highways and other services. And that's what we're hoping to do moving forward is really trying to influence the importance of our vision document, our strategy, and those service delivery plans moving forward.
Thank you. I did call Helen Kay earlier, so I'll call her and then come back to you, John. Yeah, sorry, Helen, hold on just a sec.
Yeah, it's just the fact that I don't think being pro-farming and not wanting to have solar panels on particular fields or anything else, that is hysterical. I think that's just, I think that's an over word, if we like.
It's just a personal choice of words, but I
just think factually, it's not hysterical to be pro-farming.
It wasn't hysterical being pro-farm. It wasn't hysterical about. For clarity, my comment was aimed at the fact that. Well, how can I say it? We all at one point. I don't want to have a debate at Gosford floor. Shall we take it privately? Unless you want me to clarify my position.
Shall I proceed?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Really interesting, and I agree with lots of what's been said. I just wanted to talk about how to get this embedded in terms of the culture within the council and my experience of the past. When we were in Mendip, at the moment we've got a few lines, like it says what at the end of every report, what are the qualities implications, what are the sustainability implications, whatever. You don't really know what's going through the officer's mind when they write that, and often it's a judgment, and you don't know that they've been through a process as to how they've made that judgment about sustainability implications. So what we did in Mendip was we asked officers if it was a big decision report, especially if it was over a certain amount of money involved, to do a kind of a table, which was a bit like an equalities assessment. Unfortunately, against my advice, they did it and made it very complicated, a bit like an equalities assessment, and there were over 50 questions. When I worked as an officer in London Borough, we did the same thing, but we just had a kind of a table that was like 5 by 5, like a risk assessment type of table that had very simple sort of headings in it. What are the effects on transport, waste, environment, and something else. I can't remember what it was. And it was a very simple assessment. And then they had a kind of a score. Even that might be too onerous for some. But, I'm just thinking about ways to get this embedded. So that's one way. If we were to have some kind of table and ask officers to look at sustainability implications, I would just say do not make it too complicated and too onerous. Right. Secondly, In terms of, again, working at in a London borough 25 years ago, every single member of staff by compulsory had to do carbon training, or the equivalent as we called it back then, looking at our equivalent of this climate vision and doing a half day of, what do you call it, CPD, understanding it and looking at where their departments could aid and abet the different objectives within the climate vision or the environment vision or whatever it was called back then. And again, I think that would help engender a kind of a culture change, which at the moment doing carbon training is optional. It's not compulsory. And I just really feel that if we're really going to tackle this, we've got, and it sounds from what James was saying, that there is a willingness of staff to buy into it. Let's get those sort of active champions, if you like, talking to the rest of their teams and motivating the rest of their teams. I think I've also worked in councils where there's been that, like they're called environment champions. We need to have this sort of really embedded in through the whole organisation, and those are just a couple of ideas going forward. When we actually do our action plan, when we develop our objectives. And lastly, just picking up on Dawn's point, yes, it's important to have KPIs. Yes, it's important to have targets and all the rest of it, but we can get over obsessed with them. We all know what are the biggest climate problems with carbon emitters and the things that we have to do in terms of retrofit, etc. We all know what the big things are that we need to do. And I remember it was 30 or 40 years ago, someone from the United Nations saying we'll be the first species to measure our own extinction. There's no point just measuring everything and not doing the actions. The actions are more important than the measuring. Of course we have to do the measuring, but let's just keep it in proportion and not get over obsessed with getting, it's got to be absolutely 100% accurate. I really appreciate the work that has been done on the carbon baseline, but let's draw a line under it at some point. That would be my advice, because otherwise you're obsessing about the wrong thing. Right, thank you.
Right, thank you, Helen. Right, so I'm drawing this in now. Thank you very much. First of all, just a couple of points I would make. I think James touched on it. Was the sense of sometimes compromise that we end up finding and being frustrated by. The request for a fleet of, I think they were Send related minibuses, was run past me recently, and one of those vehicles was down to be electric, and I obviously asked why we couldn't go the whole way. I knew what the answer would be, of course, and it's that they are massively expensive, and it all seems that takes us one step forward and two steps back. We've got one vehicle in the new fleet will be electric, but obviously there's going to be quite a lifespan of the other vehicles that we're currently buying. So dealing with that, I think there's another area of compromise perhaps in planning, being on a planning committee myself, where there are ecological reports coming through, and I found that they rarely challenge the planning advice. And I don't know whether it's simply they agree with them, but when perhaps we as councils are brought forward issues that we're very concerned about in terms of biodiversity and so on, there doesn't seem to be an awful lot of pushback, particularly on the bigger developments. Is that because there's pressures in other areas of the council to deal with it? And the last thing, I'll let you come back on that in a minute. And the last thing I was going to say was, and this is a purely personal issue on the 2030 matter, I think we should stand by it, and I think we should measure it, and not kick the can down the road. And if we have failed in any way in 2030, we acknowledge that failure. And we move on to try and catch up as quick as we can. It's a tall order for the officers, of course it is, but I think it's far better to be honest at that stage and say, well, let's shove it on to 2035 or 2040, because that time will arrive and we'll be doing the same thing. But if you want to come back on me on any of those issues, particularly the ecology reports of planning, I'm happy.
Thank you, Chair. I think you're right in terms of it keeps the feet over the fire, isn't it? The target in terms of the team, they are ambitious, they are passionate about this, so they're going to keep fighting right to the 2030 anyway. We've got a mission to deliver, and I think the vision document really from various portfolio holders, my current and the previous portfolios before, instead of refreshing a strategy, which we already know there's a reason, was the vision document was to frame the direction of travel, and then it was about delivering at pace. We know that we need to crack on. We know that we need to work at pace on this. So I'm hoping that the vision document is just not another something to put onto the shelf, but something that actually will frame the importance of why we need to deliver at pace. In terms of the planning function, all I can say is I know there's high volumes of work in terms of my ecology service responses, and obviously with the flood and coastal planning responses as well. They are working to tackle some of that backlog, and I know that some of the strategic sort of documents that we have around the local nature recovery strategy will help inform them in terms of broader responses in the future. It's challenging at the moment, I guess, to sort of look at that attention to detail and respond in the quality time limits that they have. I think it's just a progression. It's part of that development plan to ensure that we get a better quality response moving forward. I think the ecology team are quite keen on that, but they also know they're up against it in terms of trying to help the planning function move forward.
Thank you very much, James. Well, to summarise, we've had Dave. Yes, I'd like to summarise. Really, we're way over on this.
Well, if I may, but the trouble is you opened up a new debate in your comments, and this committee has already made a recommendation on targets now, but you've gone against that now. So I do wish.
Sorry, remind me, which bit have I gone against?
So I do just wish to check that the recommendation from this committee is still going forward to review. If I could also just mention, you used, I'm surprised, Martin, but you used an example yourself of how we've already missed the 2030, and there's just examples all over the council of this. So you said we've just ordered send vehicles which are going to burn fossil fuels. Those vehicles are going to last beyond 2030. So unless we're going to waste more money, and I'm not advocating it, and scrap them before the end of their life, we've missed it. And there's just examples of that everywhere, and there's been examples for ages, and we've been seeing officers come to us with reports whereby, and there was even one example where it was in the same sentence, where officers were talking about trying to get to 2030 and 2050 in the same sentence, and it just ended up a complete mess. They didn't know what they were doing, and it didn't make any sense. We're not providing guidance on moving forward on this. We're just saying it's okay to have a mess and something that doesn't make any sense. And I've just seen this as time after time after a failure. I've been raising this for some time. Now this committee has raised it a few times and has agreed a recommendation which you went along with at the time, that the executive should review this. And try and get it sorted out so we can be on a sensible path, because we're not on a sensible path, and we have got to fit in with government. We're not government. We can't ignore what government's doing, but we should be moving it along. We need to be moving it along as quickly as possible. And this muddle, this fudge, this mess sitting in the middle of it all, to me, does not look helpful. And I would like us to see some guidance that really does that, and I would really like the recommendation that we have previously agreed to go forward.
Didn't contradict that. I said it was a personal view, but I take your point, and your point will be minuted. I'll summarise now, please.
Sorry, Martin, nobody got back to me on my points, and I'd just like it to ask if they can also be minuted, if no one's going to come back to me. Thank you.
I'm going to draw this. I'm going to let you come back, and then I'm drawing it because I feel this meeting is getting a bit out of control, and it's my job to control it. So let's go back to James, please, for one last comment, and then I will summarise.
Yeah, so Councillor Kay's points, I think, was around the environment impact assessments, trying to keep it a more simple approach. We know that committee reports, non-key decision papers, there is consultees which come to Mark and the team for response. The same with nature. They are quite simple at the moment. So I haven't necessarily seen this 50-item matrix. It's quite a simple environmental impact assessment, and our comments at this moment in time. If Councillor Kay has something she could send me to have a look, and in what context, I'm more than happy to have a look at that area. Areas that we're trying to focus on for 2026 is how we can support the focus and staff charters, but I know services are starting to look at where there is an environmental impact element. So what are they doing on a day-to-day basis, which could look at our climate and ecological emergency as well. So that's some areas of work that we're hoping to do in terms of the culture. But in terms of Somerset Council, we're still building it, I feel, in terms of its infancy is early. We're at a stage now that we are starting to create those cultures in our individual silo service areas, and that will form part of the broader, I think, culture of this council moving forward. So I feel hopeful, I feel confident that that culture will be created, but it's baby steps.
Thank you, Mark.
I've got a meeting next week with the provider who did the carbon literacy training when we were Somerset Council and districts, and we had 150 senior officers did the training back in 2021, and it was offered to members as well. We had about 30 members take it up, so that will be running again in the new year. So we're starting hopefully sort of February time. We'll have some dates, and it will run through the rest of next year.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've got a list of possible things to summarise. I'm not going to do that. I think we've had enough time on it. We will look in the minutes if we need to remind ourselves of what was discussed. But so I'm going to conclude by saying thanks to James and Mark and for your department for all the work you've done. And your thanks to us is actually, despite my apparent cynicism, is actually greatly thought of, highly thought of. And please, would you pass our thanks on to your team, who we don't see much of and probably don't get the credit that's due. Thank you very much. Right, I'm going to call a 10-minute interlude. Sorry, Richard. We need a 10-minute interlude and a break, and then we'll come back to the next item. Thank you. Okay, if we can return to the meeting. Thank you all very much for that. So we move on to agenda item 9, which is the lead member's report for transport and waste. And thank you, Richard Wilkins, for coming to the meeting to report for us.
Thank you, Chair. I've got quite a comprehensive report, which covers a wide area of well, everything in my portfolio. I'm not going to do a James Duval and be very specific, but what I will do is I will ask, I've got with me both Michael Dale-Jones, who covers transport, and Michael Caldell, who covers waste, and I'm going to ask them to just give a very, very brief overview and to give everybody a chance to ask some pertinent questions. So would it be okay to hand over to Michael Dale-Jones, Chair?
Of course. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll be brief just to introduce the paper. So as Councillor Wilkins says, it's a very wide portfolio in terms of infrastructure and transport. So we've set out in the paper the full range of services that we've provided over the year. And hopefully it gives a sense of some of the volume of work, some of the vast volume of work. In some instances, there's some pretty impressive numbers there in terms of the amount of things that have been progressed within each of the service areas. So we feel overall it's been a successful year in terms of delivery of some of our long-standing major projects. So we're particularly noting the Junction 26 scheme and the Dunball roundabout scheme as fairly long-standing major projects that we've now brought to conclusion. Lots of work on maintaining a safe road network through our maintenance functions and our road safety functions. and a high volume of work in terms of managing street works on the system. I think that's been this year an ever-growing challenge in terms of the volume of work and the number of utilities, etc., that want to get space on the road network and how we coordinate all of that. It's been a challenging year in certain places, but we have successfully managed that. I would also draw your attention to a couple of things. So we've talked about the journey to net zero and carbon reduction in the last paper and discussion. So I think the Highway Service has done a lot on this. We've been part of the National Live Labs programme, which is looking at how we try and reduce carbon emissions from what we do. Obviously, as a service, we're pretty carbon intensive. A lot of what we do is stick hot tarmac in the road, and we travel around a lot. So we've had a really good piece of work over the last year to look at what we can do to reduce that, with some successful schemes around using different materials and doing more on recycling materials in situ and that sort of thing. And then finally, I would just draw your attention, I think, to the customer service and community engagement side of things. We have a lot of correspondence and a lot of inquiries about what we do, and Councillor Wilkins has been really thoroughly working with us on this year, challenging us hard to improve how we deal with those communications, and has worked with us to put in place a lot of change. So we're now able to put some self-service options up. So hopefully you will have seen that there are some really good interactive maps now where people can find out when their gully was last emptied and when it's next due to be emptied, what the planned maintenance works are for their area, the resurfacing programs, etc. And also members are now getting regular emails from our highway system to tell them what was done in their patch, which whilst I imagine there's probably some improvement needed there in terms of what it's actually telling you and some of the detail, at least we are starting to get some information out there from our systems. So hopefully that's been well received, and that's thanks to Councillor Wilkins for helping us move those things forward. So I'll just hand over to Mike just to say a few words about waste, if that's okay.
Thank you, Mike. So thanks for the opportunity to present this. Just a brief overview of Somerset Council's Waste Service annual report for 24-25. So this year, Somerset handled over 261,000 tonnes of waste, a slight increase from 23-24, mainly due to more garden waste and residual waste. Despite this, our recycling rate remains strong at 56%, up from 52% before the Recycle More initiative began. Household waste for disposal as a system whole is down only 6,500 tonnes compared to the period before Recycle More was implemented. And another strong headline is that only a very small proportion of our recycling, just over 4%, leaves the UK. Curbside recycling continues to perform well, with participation rising to 91% of households, and coupled with a significant reduction of refuse presented at the curbside. Our recycling centres are also performing well, with a recycling rate of nearly 62%. We've seen positive change in resident behaviour, especially around food waste recycling, where presentation rates are up nearly 10% since prior to Recycle More. This year, and to build on this, we've launched a major food waste campaign, basically aiming to capture an additional 2,000 tonnes of food waste. On the service side, we had an enforced renegotiation with Suez, which was a major body of work, and that was successfully concluded. And we've also expanded our flexible plastics collection pilot to over 22,000 homes, which kind of prepares us for future national requirements. Customer experience has also improved, with over 84% of service requests now handled online, and upgrades to our digital platforms to making it easier for residents to access our services. Looking ahead, we're preparing for significant national policy changes, including extended producer responsibility, simpler recycling and the deposit return scheme, and our ongoing engagement with government and our contractors ensures that we're ready for these changes. And finally, I'm pleased to report that customer satisfaction with our services increased and remains higher than the UK average, really reflecting our commitment to transparency, community engagement and continuous improvement. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Questions, please. Dave.
Sorry, I've got a few. I didn't realise I would instantly move in first, but thank you. Okay, start with transport, if that's all right. I was pleased to hear we've got information about gullies. It's clearly passed me by, and it's online already. My goodness, I must have missed that one. Great. Travel plans, page 16. It says the new guidance on that is the end of this year. That's still not sort of come to scrutiny yet. So unless it means end of next year, although I don't expect it does. Yes, could we just be told about that? We've been told that there would be a report to scrutiny because it wasn't covered in the consultation report that we did have. So we were told that was going to come to us in the new year, which seems to conflict with the guidance coming out at the end of this year. Yeah, active travel and quiet lanes. I don't know. We do all the transport. I've got 4 transport ones. So I say them all now. So on active travel and quiet lanes, they're talked about here. And I was just sort of having this discussion a little bit with Richard earlier. What's the sort of process for getting schemes onto this? There's the schemes in my area which are keen on this, but can't seem to get. How do you get considered for the funding for active travel that the council schemes? What was the process for allocating that? And it says green lanes. I have an idea it may be quiet lanes are mentioned in there, which look like a fairly simple thing to do. And it says that they're being progressed in parts of the council. Again, what's the process to get the council to agree that designation, or is it entirely outside the council? We're not sure. And then finally, on rights of way, it says. I have a feeling the numbers probably aren't quite right, but on page 27, it seems to indicate that of network issues reported on the online system, it seems to imply, well, nearly all of them, in fact, more than all of them are being dealt with. I have to say the experience in our area is very few of them get dealt with. So again, what's quite going on? What's the meaning of that? If you look in our area on there, they're sitting there for years, not being closed down, and the problem's still there. So I don't know if there's anyone who can cover that. I've got some waste ones. Perhaps come to those in a moment, if okay.
I'll come back on those questions. As Mike. Thank you.
Yeah, shall I respond to those? So the travel plan guidance has been developed, rewritten, and consulted on. So the ability to influence it, I think, from a scrutiny committee is fairly limited now. I'm happy to bring it to the committee for consideration prior to it being formally adopted, but it's not something that at this stage you're likely to be able to significantly change, having been through that process.
It was covered last time. An idea it's on our forward plan, and I understood we were told last time that there was going to be a report to scrutiny early in the new year, and I think that's what it says in the minutes. So I'd love to go and double check that, but I think it's what it says. So.
We can certainly check that. I'll take that away. Councillor myself. The active travel and quiet lanes processes. So active travel has to date been driven fairly heavily by Active Travel England, who provide us with grants and for us to make specific business cases for schemes. So we're moving hopefully into a more flexible era where they're going to give us some longer term grant settlements, hopefully a multi-year settlement, so that we'll know over a number of years what we might be getting, and we'll be doing some work to prepare a pipeline of schemes for that future funding. We haven't yet got the figures in detail. We're still waiting for that. But until now, we've essentially been given a period of time to work up a business case, and we've gone to look through the various schemes that have had some development work on them through our previous network development work, and chosen schemes that look like they fit the criteria and are deliverable in the timescale. So that's been the process to date, and I think we've obviously worked with the executive lead member, and the Councillor Wyke is now been given a role of active travel champion as well within the group. So we're working with Councillor Wilkins and Councillor Wyke on the future pipeline. We would say, I think, most of the scheme work is derived from network planning that's been done over a period of time. So people will have engaged with us on the developments of cycling and walking infrastructure plans for the area. So most of the schemes are derived from those, and also some of the more rural work that's been done. I think that's probably all to say on that at the moment, but it is an area where we're going to get more flexibility, I think, so it would be good to think about how we enable people to engage in that. Some of the local community networks are also setting up active travel groups. I think that would be a really good route to get a sort of sense from the community of what their sort of sense of priorities are from the LCN perspective, and that will feed into our planning. Quiet lanes, I think that the one or two schemes that we've been looking at there have been very much proposals put forward by the locality. And I know Matthew Prince has been doing a lot of work with a couple of areas to look at what's possible and to try and think about piloting some schemes. But those are really difficult schemes to do, just because there's an expectation that the area you're going through has very little traffic in it already, and you're essentially signposting people through very lightly trafficked areas, and it's very difficult to find those sorts of environments at the moment without us having to do works to reduce traffic travelling through those areas. But I would suggest I can ask Matthew Prince to get in touch, Councillor Mansell, to sort of explain a bit more detail about those schemes if you'd like. And rights of way, I think the figures for rights of way, you may be thinking of the backlog in terms of resolving changes to the definitive map, for which there is a very large backlog. However, the figures you were quoting are around fairly routine issues that people raise when they're walking along the path, and there's a bit of work that needs doing or something to clear it out. So obviously there's a much higher volume of those sorts of issues that come through to us and are dealt with by the maintenance team. But absolutely there is, and I think elsewhere in the report it talks about the backlog of changes to the definitive map. So we've got paragraph 10.5 on page 28 talks about the backlog now being 433 applications, which probably is the issue you're thinking about, and that is a function of the capacity of the team to progress those processes, which are very, very detailed legal processes, often taking many months to look into the legal status of some of those routes and historical documents to try and understand where they've come from in terms of being a right of way. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. It was on the maintenance on the right of way, so okay, not quite sure, but good to hear that there is a maintenance team. Just not quite. We're seeing some of it, but maybe it depends what the maintenance is. But I'm aware the council focuses on the surface rather than on the hedges and things alongside. All right, but probably won't take that one any further. And Matthew's already got an inquiry. I've been waiting for a reply for ages now. So anyway, I'm sure eventually we'll get a reply. But there is a quiet lane proposed in our area, which also has a feasibility study funded by the county council done, and the parish council's making it go, but we just can't get any response from council officers on it. So anyway,
yeah, I will follow that one up. Thank
okay, thanks. I've raised it's been raised with Sunita more recently, so there's been several requests. So both Matthew and Sunita well know about it, or should do. I'll go on to waste if that's all right.
Yeah, can you just remind me what was it? What issue was it? I've come with my notes that you mentioned should be coming up. You thought was coming up in the on the agenda early in the new year.
Travel plans.
Travel plans. Yes,
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yes, I haven't looked back at the minutes. I have an idea it's there, but and I mentioned it earlier for the outcome tracker.
Yeah.
So anyway, it'll be checked. So gosh, page so waste. Get my mind in gear on that one. One was interest in all the national policy changes coming through, which my understanding could have quite an impact. So they're mentioned in there. There's the extended producer responsibility. There's other ones. I think it would be helpful if we could be told a little bit more what may be hoped on that. My understanding is, so this is sort of a question to check that the council could get quite a substantial sum of money in the millions from the packaging industry to support our collections. So it'd be interested to know what the expectations is, how that's going on the extended producer responsibility. On the other hand, I understand there's also, which I don't think is mentioned in the report, but for incinerators, there's a emissions trading scheme which is going to increase the costs and could swing things in the same direction another way because of all the carbon coming out when waste is burnt in incinerators. So if anything could be said on, these looming things on the national agenda, my understanding is they could be very significant. I've got a question on the performance. We're doing quite well. We're sort of in the 50s on recycling rate. I just have a feeling we should be sort of doing a bit more, and I'm not quite understanding why. I mean, it may be just reflecting that how waste stream has changed, but there's lots of good signs of things that's happening. But the performance at 50-odd%, I think there's some there needs to be a look at how we could move that on, and I think there was the expectation in terms of the services that they would be achieving more. And in the past, my recollection is the recycling rate at recycling centres was over 70%. It now seems to be 60-odd%. And the lower the recycling rate, the more that's going down the expensive route of disposal. This may warrant a report to committee at a future date. What is the room to move that on? It matters both environmentally and financially, but there may be officer comments to help. But I'm thinking a report to look into that in more depth would be helpful. Just to say that the community work scene going on looks great. So very pleased to see the community action groups and what's been resulting there. Really pleased to hear that the reuse shop at Taunton is recycling centres open again. It would be really good if we could have more reuse shops at other recycling centres, and I'd like that to be on the agenda. And then just finally, there's a scorecard on page 40, looking at how the services are doing, which on the whole is really positive and all looks really good. But there's one which is not so positive, and again, a response would be helpful. And this is on the curbside collections, leaving the street clean after collections. And lots of people are saying that it's extremely poor. And I have to say that there's less examples of that now, but I do still get people complaining about stuff spilling from vehicles and the like. So yeah, what's being done about that one?
Thank you, Richard. We'll come back on that one.
Yeah, I thought I'd just come in before we go over to Michael on the performance. It's very clear that Somerset, the people of Somerset, are brilliant at recycling, and it is the people that put the effort in. They separate out their recycling from the rubbish and in different sections, and we really need to make it clear that the effort that people put in has been incredible, and it's far above comparable places, and that is down to the people of Somerset. Don't be mistaken, and you quite rightly said that it's slightly reduced, but we got to understand that we have a growing population. People move into Somerset, and we have to train them. They have to learn to be Somersetians, and it's really important that we do get the message across that Somerset is very good at recycling. We can do better, and it's always the case that we have to consistently put the message forward, remind people, and put the effort in, do the comms to get people to continue this way. And I'd like to just mention the trials of the soft plastic in collection in your area, Chair, in the east of the county, which has been brilliant, and people get it. People of Somerset absolutely get what needs to be done, but like I said, we strive to do better, and we will do better. But I will hand over to Mike to sort of tell you about the more technical side of things.
Thanks, Richard. So in terms of the deadlines for basic recycling and responsibility, we are going to be required to kind of expand our kind of recycling service into particularly communal sites. So introduction of food waste, mixed plastics, that kind of stuff. We're looking to kind of get that in next March, April time. Above that, in March 27, April 27, we have a requirement to introduce flexible plastics across county. That's work that's kind of ongoing on a contractual basis at the moment in terms of basically delivering those aspects. You're right about the emissions trading scheme in 2028. I think it's a source of concern for all involved. And really what this means is that there are going to be additional levies for effectively the incineration of fossil carbon. We're working with a number of bodies at the moment, really just to define the cost impact of that, and how that kind of aligns to the payments from extended producer responsibility. And I think you're probably right, David. I think that basically that's something that we can come back to with you in a bit more detail, just to kind of because these are very complex subjects, and we require basically some kind of preparation. So absolutely more than happy to come back and kind of explain it in a bit more depth.
Okay.
In terms of your point about basic spillages, in terms of basic customer behaviour, we've been working really hard with Suez over the past kind of 6 months to improve their performances. I think what we can kind of see with Suez in terms of the delivery of the curbside service over the past 6 months, certainly we've seen massive improvements in terms of the quality of service delivery across all indexes, and that's been a particular focus of ours. We received the data from the Independent Survey. It's about a year ago now, and that's been a focus of ours in order to kind of culturally change their crews and basically increase responsiveness. It does happen from time to time. Basically, the issue with the curbside sort basic method, it is more prone to that, particularly in kind of when it's windy. but it's kind of getting that more focus back onto crews in order to kind of resolve those issues as and when they see them. Does that answer all your questions, David?
I think it does mostly. Thanks, Mike. I will. I think there is still something about the performance issue, and I will just mention that Wales, for example, and I've not looked recently, so maybe they've declined a bit, but Wales was up at about 70% recycling. They were amongst the world leaders. There was a time when Wales used to visit Somerset to find out the good things to do. Just possibly we need to be looking now the other way round, and our performance is now in the 50s. So I have a feeling there is some room to look how we could achieve some improvement there. But I agree with Richard on the whole. Somerset people are very good recyclers, but there does appear to be some scope to achieve more, which would be good for the environment. It would be also good for the council's bank balance, because landfill is, well, incineration these days is still the expensive route. So we want to be diverting it away from that. So perhaps if I could say, if we could have a report sometime, it's not immediately urgent, but looking a bit more at the performance issues and what could be done to increase the recycling performance.
Thank you. Can I just have a follow up on that, and then I'll bring in Marcus and Rob. Yeah, the flexible plastics issue, right? Because it's always something that's interested me because I have to do it. And I think I said before, it's obvious why you chose Frome for this, because we are obviously the most diligent community in the entirety of Somerset. But it's been very successful, but it also does make you realise just how much flexible plastic, the wrappers, crisp bags, that sort of thing is part of our rubbish, and think that we've been throwing away before is but alarming. There's so much of it. I'm horrified sometimes by the amount that I'm putting in the waste, and that is going to be standard across Somerset from April 27. Is that right, Mike?
We've got a requirement to expand it to the whole of Somerset by that point. Yeah, so we've got a requirement to expand it to the whole of Somerset by that point, and it is the collection of flexible plastics. This is the work done in that part of Mendip. It has been a trial to inform how we go and deliver that service. The delivery service might be a little different across the rest of the county, but we're kind of currently evaluating that outcome with Suez at the moment.
Yeah, and so thank you, because I got my bags. Yeah, and we had a conversation about that, didn't we? Yeah, and that's another thing, is actually getting the bags out to people, or as you say, how are they going to actually separate that plastic from the other stuff is very important. I mention it because other people will come to terms with it later. And does most of our waste that can't be recycled, non-recyclable waste, does it go to the Avonmouth plant for incineration?
Yes, it does. We've all of our residual waste is treated by Viridor. About nearly all of it goes to the site at Avonmouth. For the bulky waste, it requires specific kind of front end, kind of basic maceration and I basically break it down. That's sent to the Trident facility just outside Cardiff. So it's all within the same contract, and it all goes to Viridor, but slightly different reception points there. But I mean, it's a very, very low quantity.
Okay, I've got Marcus and Rob and Dawn. You look like you've got your hand up. I say, Marcus, please.
Yeah, a bit like Dave, me already. How did that happen? Thank you, Richard, for attending our scrutiny. It's nice to see a portfolio member holder at this committee. Thank you for coming. I would hasten to add that some portfolio holders come to some of the other committees, particularly children's and families. Yeah, I'm trying not to. Can I stick with waste first and then talk about transport afterwards, if I can, Chair? I mean, I suppose the more with regard to waste. I mean, I've noticed in your little report you talk about the repair shops and the repair cafes, etc. And I know it's nice to see that the Minehead Man Shed, which shamefully I've yet to go and visit, even though I saw it before it happened, is doing that. And it'd be nice. Is that something that maybe we should? The question I suppose is that something maybe we can roll out more? Because actually, it's just shameful how much, especially electrical stuff, it's just cheaper to buy a new one than to try and get it repaired. I include into that electric tower rails, as I discovered the other day, as I'm about to buy 2 more, rather than try and repair the other ones because it's uneconomic. Well, it's just impossible to do. But that gets to a changing behaviours thing and how we introduce that into waste. And if I can just touch on recycling, I mean, and the recycling centres, obviously, if we're changing behaviours and we're talking about changing people's lives and making it easy, I think for me to figure out when the recycling centres open and everything else just gets very, very tedious and probably discourages me from actually going along to them. But then we talk about the commercial scrapyards refusing to take mixed metals or metals with cabling, etc. And actually, my understanding was the WE directive actually says they should take it, but you try and force a scrapyard to take something they don't take. So that's on the waste side of things. There were a couple of questions. I think there were a couple of questions in there about that. Can I move on to transport, please, if that's okay, Chair? Yeah, I noticed in your report you mentioned the Dunster to Minehead cycle path. I can obviously, there's a lot of criticism that it doesn't get used much. You'll hear lots of people say, oh, they never see anybody on it. I would say it is getting used more and more and more. And this council is to be commended, and the previous council, however it happened, is to be commended for it happening, and gradually it's getting moved more. Sorry to be a bit parochial, but obviously that originally was a Carhampton to Minehead cycle path. And I would, what you said earlier about how you get things on the active travel scheme, I would like to see that obviously back in, because it's to tie that into the previous item or the previous agenda item. I think they're related. And then we get back onto the bus thing. And obviously I've already managed in the previous item to do mention my scheduled bus service from Minehead to Bridgewater. But something I did notice, we talk about buses, is that I discovered the other day that because a train was slightly late, that we had to drive a 50-mile round journey to Taunton to pick somebody up from the train station, because believe it or not, the last bus from Taunton to Minehead is 5 o'clock on a Sunday. Is it me or is that just bonkers? I mean, I know obviously when you talk about parking in Taunton, it's a special day, and Sundays are special and they shouldn't be interfered with. But to not be able to get a bus after 5 o'clock on a Sunday from Taunton to Minehead is it's incomprehensible. As it happens, we were lucky where, my other half went in her ULEZ compliant car rather than me going my 20-year-old diesel. But it's things like that tie into the previous thing that I think we're talking about. So that Sunday bus is a big issue. We talk about active travel, we talk about cycling in Exmoor. I know there was work being done and how we can encourage more cycling in Exmoor, which is more difficult. And also we talked about the rights of way team, obviously again being parochial. How long? We've had an issue with the Steam Coast Trial, which is part of the active travel network, I suppose, which has obviously had an issue for probably about 8 years, which is finally hopefully coming to some sort of conclusion. But how can something like that, that's so important, take so long, and what can we do to stop something like that happening again, where somebody can just close a right of way, or a footpath got moved in strange circumstances and nobody quite, well, there's a couple of people who seem to know what went on, but this goes above my head. But anyway, it'd be good news if that gets sorted out. And I've got another 2 more points if I can, Chair, or maybe three actually. So it's not often we have the portfolio holder in the room. So 20-mile-an-hour limits. Obviously, it'd be nice if, again, with the previous item, if any consultation that happens could include the division member, because I'm fed up of finding out about it in the press when 20-mile-an-hour limits are proposed. I appreciate they've gone through to the LCNs as well. But I do feel that, as division councillors, we are there to represent the whole division. So it'd be nice if we had a bit of engagement there. And one more thing, if I can, and this is probably directed over there, is he's off. I never quite get, but one of the things that I have, one of the problems I have at parish councils, and this is because there's people at parish councils from all walks of life, builders, all sorts of lives, and they look at the costs of small repair projects, and they just look at me as if I'm responsible personally for it, because they'll look at something they think they could fix for 15 grand, and suddenly the council's got 150 grand repair bill. And how do we deal with situations like that? Because I appreciate the safety concerns and highway issues, but are we happy that, or how do we stop? I don't know how to word this. How do we stop not unnecessary expenditure, but how do we make sure that that best value is best value? Because it's very difficult for me as a layman to sit there arguing with someone who's a builder and say what on earth are they doing that for and how they're doing it, and it's a constant battle that I have, particularly in the more rural parish councils. And I've gone on, I think, long enough. Only one thing is parking reviews. I know people have talked about parking reviews elsewhere, but when you've had a parking review done and not implemented, do we have any idea of timescales of when we'll be in a position to actually implement a review that was taken out several years ago? Apologies, Chair, for having so much.
That's all right. And I will correct you. I'm sure you meant other me. I'm sure you meant other committee members, but Councillor Wilkins is a regular attendee at these meetings. And,
yeah, I'm aware of that.
So. Yes, yeah. I could see his eyebrows raising. I didn't want to start the fight, Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, Richard.
Do you know what? I haven't written down all those points. You rattled off quite a few. But yeah, I hope that you've noticed that I have attended. I think pretty much all of these scrutiny committees. If I haven't, I will apologise. But I do have a lot on my plate most of the time. There was a lot to go through. We are, as Mike has said, we are working very hard on communications. We don't always get it perfectly right, but that this is an ongoing piece of work. So we do try and make sure that divisional members are part of everything we do. I think it is difficult as a local councillor when you are at a parish council and people have a perception about what can be done for what price. I often, whenever there's a big scheme that is on the roads, you often see on Facebook or whatever, the Chinese would have built this in 2 hours and it would have cost 50p. And then we see pictures of collapsed infrastructure 2 days later, but that doesn't seem to always connect. We do work extraordinarily hard on best value. Obviously, the better price we can get, the more we can do. And so it's a huge focus of ours. And we have frameworks and we have stop gaps and we look at these things very, I would say often, and we do get good value for money in the round, but it is a difficult message, as you well say, to get across. I'm glad to hear about the Steam Coast Trail. Is it Steam Coast Trail? You might have to correct me. 8 years, actually, with the backlog we've got. That's incredibly fast. It's scarily fast. This is a countrywide issue, and it's not there's not an easy answer to that. We should be able to do things faster, but it's not. It's down to a lot of reasons, and things often get stuck in the Secretary of State's inbox, shall we say, which we do not have control over. However, you know, I think that's a lobbying point that I will take forward about how we can get quicker and faster results in these things, and I will take that on board. You can have to remind me of some of your other points.
Yeah, I mean, I think I talked about getting the cycle path back onto the agenda, but of course some of those were pro. So far, I'm happy with you, Chair. Conscious of time, that I can take them up with Richard in afterwards. I think.
Can I just move on to waste, if that's okay? Just to say, you said about rolling out the fixie, the man shed that you've got there. That's already very much rolled out, and we actually have fixie vans which drive around to places that don't have a solid area. So, and we're really pleased about that. And the other thing about not being able to find out when your recycling centre is open, we have a website. Please visit the website, and via Facebook and other means, we do put out when they are open, and when they're not, and more often than not they are open. So I will if there's any other point that I've missed.
Yes, sorry for everyone. The only thing I was going to say was parking reviews, and I'm not being parochial, just generally, because I know they've gone out.
I think I'll hand over to Mike to answer that one. I believe that there was a legacy parking review, and it's somewhat got lost. I'm not sure.
So, if you're talking about residence parking schemes, is that where you're thinking, Councillor Crevice, or?
Well, specifically, I mean, I don't want to bore people in the details, but I'm talking about the Dunster one. That was, as far as I know, all ready to hit the button and go with, and then the parking review being done, and then it's all ground to a halt for various reasons.
So the parking team has had, as is stated in the report, significant capacity challenges this year, with about 50% of the posts in the team vacant, and we've been working hard to recruit to those. There has been a lot of stuff that has been essentially deferred whilst we get the capacity in place. I think if it's a wider parking review, I imagine we will probably start to wrap that up in the new work on parking across the county that we started to discuss at executive yesterday. But I will check on the status of that particular piece of work and see where we are and provide you some feedback. But it may well be sensible now just to kind of roll it into the future work that we're going to do.
I can check, and I apologise if I misphrased my words. I appreciate Richard's here a lot, and also I'd like to say that Richard, as portfolio holder, always gets back to you. Well, gets back to me anyway, but I always find him very very approachable.
You've greatly improved your observation. Thank you. Rob Reid, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm glad active travel has been brought up, because it's a particular favourite of mine as a former chair of the Strawberry Line, and still keep an eye on it, and it's going very well. Absolutely delighted. But what's been coming quite clearly now from what's been said around the meeting is the problem we've got with footpaths. It is as you go around parish councils, it is a major bone of contention that they're not getting maintained, or there are problems on it. If you look at the council website map of footpaths, it's littered with red things that need to be looked at and aren't being. Some of the comments we've had from the officers so far that, well, that's just the way it is. I don't think that's an acceptable answer. And then we go on to reinstatement of footpaths. For example, from Castle Carey Station to the neighbouring village of Ditchit, there is a little bit missing. They've been trying to be put back on for years, which would reduce carbon footprint, which we were talking about earlier on. And there's very little happening at all. the parish councils are asked for footpath officers to report. They do report, and quite often they don't get any response from the council at all on what they have reported. I think the footpaths, there are thousands of miles of footpaths in Somerset. I appreciate that. They're a wonderful asset. They're not being looked after as they should. I just wonder if we could bring it forward, perhaps as a future item of how we deal with footpaths, because they're clearly not being dealt with properly at the minute. Thank you.
Richard?
You're absolutely right. There are thousands of miles. In fact, from memory, there's a similar mileage of footpaths as there are roads. And to be clear, we get a maintenance grant for roads. We do not get that for our footpaths. And it's very true that we have a mixed result with footpaths. I will point to my own area where I have two parishes that are next to each other, and one is very proactive in supporting their own footpath areas, and as a result, they get amazing results for their footpaths. They put that in. They treat that as an important part of the parish, and as a result, they get very well serviced, I believe, by our department. But it isn't easy. We do have to find funds for these things, and like I said, the amount of area is comparable to the amount of roads we have in mileage. So it's not the easiest thing to deal with, and it's I think we all would love to do a lot more on footpaths, but we do have budgetary considerations. I don't know whether Mike could elaborate on what I'm trying to say.
I think that's fair. I think that it's about 6,700 kilometres of network, and we do a lot of work with volunteers to keep it clear, and we do have maintenance activity that we carry out. But I think you're quite right. It's not as well resourced as the resourcing of the highway network because of the way the grants work. So I think the team does a great work with the resource it has, and that's where we are. So I think if we made a conscious decision as part of the workforce restructuring to reduce capacity in that area as one area which was funded by the general fund, and in the financial emergency budget discussions we had last year, that was one area that did get reduced. So I think the team is working within the capacity that's been given by the council to do things. So I think if that wants to be examined and discussed, I'm very happy for the rights of way service managers to come in and talk through what he does and explain how they're prioritising work, etc. If that would be helpful. But I think it would be very much in the context of it's a team that has limited resource, and that was a conscious decision of the council to leave it that way at the moment. So very happy to facilitate a discussion though.
Chair, can I just say, I appreciate the answer. I quite accept that, budgetary restraints and so on. However, a lot of the footpaths have got a responsibility for the landowner as well. And without lack of officers twisting their arms, a lot of this isn't being done as well. So I would appreciate if we could maybe get the rights of way officer in and ask them these questions, and maybe put it on a future agenda. Thank you.
Rob, I think that's probably a good idea. And also, I was intrigued by, I think you said something about LCNs and active travel earlier, and whether LCNs could be drawn into this debate, but we can debate it another time. Okay, I've got. Yeah, Henry can come back on that one then. Sorry.
If you look at the forward plan, you will find that I asked for rights of way to be brought to this committee 18 months ago, and it was taken to the strategic planning. my personal view is the strategic planning gave them far less of a hard time than we would have done, and it needs to come back here. And I really, really believe that. And we've had an admission from the senior officer that most of the applications that they have accepted were accepted incorrectly. And that needs sorting out apart from everything else. My personal recommendation at the strategic planning was that we should have a member team, 3 or 5 members, actually looking at the whole issue, because the problem between maintaining something which you don't have funds to maintain, and I've got 5 bridges in my division which will never ever be upgraded, and I'm not expecting them to be, let me make that clear. But I do expect there to be a situation where we do not accept every single application that is brought in to, and I hate this word, they use upgrade, I would use the word change, a footpath to a bridleway, with almost no political, historical evidence backing them up. Sorry to get on a high horse.
Could I suggest that you, when we have an agenda setting, you know, and in terms of the forward plan,
it's in the forward
plan. Yeah, let's try and bring it forward. Okay, thank you. Dawn, sorry to hold you up.
Thank you. Oh, go ahead. Go
So just
wants to come back.
Just before, sorry, apologies. Just before we lose that item, I think we ought to be very clear what aspect of rights of way we would like to consider, because there are a number of functions of that team, and we've talked about legal processes and changes to the definitive map, which is one thing, and then I think we've got a lot of concerns here about keeping the network clear and well maintained, which is a completely different area. So I think it would be very useful to get a clear scope of what we would like to talk about. Otherwise, we'll be a bit confused. Thank you, Chair. But happy to have that in the agenda setting. Yes. Section, and perhaps to bring Pete Hobley in.
I take your point. I think a lot of it was about maintenance, actually. Right. Sorry, Dawn. Sorry.
That's okay. I had more time to eat chocolate. I would also like to point out that as Councillor Dimmery is one of my residents, he's very good at recycling the flex plastic. And there's also another thing I've come across, which I think works really well, is if you're looking for something on the Somerset Council website, don't go to the Somerset Council website and do the search. Do it on Google and say Somerset Council and then what you looking for, because then you find it. You won't find it if you do the search on the website. Anyway, just a couple of things about transport. One of the big bugbears that I hear a lot is about coordinated works. And I know that there are problems when you've got an emergency roadworks that have to happen, but there are times when a whole village is cut off, and then it becomes quite a problem to try and navigate either the bus service or the or just movement around the village. So yeah, that's I've got a couple, but it looks like Richard wants to jump in.
Do I come straight in on that?
Yeah.
And there are. We do a lot, I mean, an incredible amount of work on coordination. We try to get utilities to work together at times. It's not always easy, it's not always possible. I think where we really struggle is when a utility that has a statutory right to come onto the network, and they don't even have to tell us that they've done it until 2 hours after they've done it at times, and that's where the real problems that you're talking about. But the team work exceptionally hard at coordinating, and it's the amount of work. People won't understand the amount of roadworks which go on in Somerset, and 99.9% of them go unnoticed because they're so well organised, but it is that 1%, and we work really hard at removing that 1% where it becomes difficult. The team, that they're a small team in Streetworks that coordinate all this, are hugely knowledgeable of the area and the roads, and do have an understanding of what needs to be done, but they are a small team. They have and the number of works that are coming onto our network is large. On top of the works that us as a council, the resurfacing, the surface dressing, the general maintenance work that we perform ourselves on top of that. So thank you for highlighting it. And if something does come up, please get in touch with me immediately, and I will try to find out, and we will send somebody out. We do send people out very quickly to try and resolve these problems when they do occur.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really useful because I know that, and it's maybe then communication really with the public. I think that might be useful so that they understand the complexity sometimes, which I don't understand, but it'd be useful if they could. And then I notice, well, the Slinky bus is one of the things that comes up quite regularly, and I was just wondering if that is working, and if it's going to be. If there are any hurdles, because I know in Frome they don't use it very often. People just actually don't even know it exists. And I know I'm not trying to bring up local stuff, but I'm just curious about how that all, and are there any hurdles to rolling it out any further?
I believe we've got a Slinky bus serving every area. We started with the trial of the digital Slinky bus in the Somerton area, and I believe that's recently just had its, now I'm going to get this wrong, 100,000 trip or 10,000 trip. Yeah, I'm over egging it, but it is such a good service that it should be that number, which over the time period, and particularly that it's the area that it is incredible. I forget whether you have a digital Slinky now, and you don't. You're still on the other. We have rolled the digital side out to West Somerset and Sedgemoor area, I believe, and we will look, when we can, to roll out the digital service to other areas. But you're right. We should be promoting Slinky a lot more. It is a fantastic service, and I urge everybody to look it up and see whether it is helpful in your particular case.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm asking is simply because we're gonna find buses are going to be more and more difficult to fund, and I know that not all buses are full, and I'm hoping that we could maybe reach communities a little bit easier if we had this kind of flexible service. But if people aren't using it, then again that's a problem, and we need to encourage people to use it so that it does become a better service. Because I sometimes wonder if buses are something that maybe are going to be phased out at some point, simply because this will be the future of public transport. I don't know. It just feels really tricky for some of those communities that aren't being reached. And then just some waste questions, if I may, Chair. So there's reference in the report about the Suez contract coming very close to not happening. And I just wonder if that's a stable contract, and if there's anything that we need to keep an eye on, really, with early warning signs. One of the things that I know is that the residents always say that the waste service is really very effective. If they've got a problem, bam, it's sorted straight away. So that is one service that we always get really, really very good feedback from residents. So I don't think it's such a problem. I think it's just a concern from a management perspective that Suez is not going to be under threat as a contract.
Yeah, I think the way in which we wrote the new contract side of things really makes it very stable. I will go to Mike to perhaps elaborate on that, but I believe that we have had a stepped uplift that means that that the actual contract is stable. We're working very well with Suez, and they're performing really well, as you say, which is wins all round, I think.
Thanks, Richard. With that, delving too much into the detail, within the contract that we hold with Suez, as part of the renegotiation, we extended their basic extent of liability. So should in future they wish to basically renege on the contract, their limits of liability would be significantly greater than what they are at the moment. Also, as kind of Richard alluded to, we've had to pay them additional funds. The way that we've managed this over the kind of basic remaining contract term is we've paid less initially, but we're paying more later. All right, so their kind of break-even point is probably in 28, 29. So that kind of decreases the likelihood of them walking away if they wanted to sooner. We've got really strong contract management with them at the moment. We've got really good, strong levels of communication. There is nothing that there is nothing in their behaviour or through discussions that we're having with them at the moment that would indicate any appetite to walk away. We are talking to them about the option to extend the contract in 2030 by another 10 years. So these are all things that we're talking about. So it doesn't feel to me that they want to move away. If they were to move away prior to 2030, they'd be subject to very, very significant financial damages.
Thank you. And I just have one more. And I know it's not in your remit, but Richard, but it's fly tipping is affected by the access to places where people can get rid of stuff. And I know there's a lot more complicated issues around fly tipping, but we have such a problem. 3 times a day, one road is getting fly tipped 3 times a day. And, there's only so many times someone can report. So, I understand it's, I don't know why it doesn't sit with you, but I think it sits in another portfolio, doesn't it? So, but there's a strong impact and I'm sure it has yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But you already alluded to it's a more complicated reasonings and behaviour change and what have you. But I just think that we need to be better in enforcement in these things, and actually we need our other services, our police and what have you, to also be part of this, because clearly we don't want a situation like they're facing in, I forget where it is, somewhere at Oxfordshire somewhere, I forget which, but I think it's a district council that have just been left with more than their yearly budget worth of clean-up, where somehow they've, I don't know how that's happened, and we certainly do not want to be in that position, but there has to be a role for everybody in to get to a solution on this. But I do feel that the people of Somerset are clean as nature, if you know what I mean. We are an exemplar of how we deal with our waste, and we should never forget that, and we should keep reminding, other people, this is how you do it. But we do look to get better. As Dave said, we want to improve, absolutely, but let's not take away from the amazing effort that the people of Somerset do put forward. I'll leave it at that.
Thank you very much. I'll take that as a concluding statement. And so, summing up, we need to look at active travel and travel plans like to be reported next year, as will footpaths. We like the issue of footpaths to be brought forward if at all possible. Yes, we talked about increasing our recycling rate, making sure it doesn't go down. And transport links were mentioned as well on the forward agenda. I have to move on very quickly because we've got to be out of this room by 1:30. So let's move on to agenda item 11, climate and place scrutiny forward plan. Is that you, Jamie? Was it Mark?
It is, Chair. I was, bearing in mind the time, I wasn't planning on keeping us for too long. Members will see that the forward plan reflects that our next meeting is the 15th of January, and obviously we now need to add the M5 item onto that as well. So I think, Chair, that myself and officers will meet with you and the Vice Chair to maybe pare down that agenda slightly, because I think that's probably unmanageable in the course of one meeting. But that's not to say that we don't have busy agendas moving forward after that anyway. But that's all I was going to say, Chair.
If there's no comments, Dave.
Just on the last one, but this one too, there was a suggestion of having a report on the recycling performance, so we could look at that a bit more. But I'm certainly would be keen to see that. On the forward plan, we've got items which had looked like they were coming to us, but they're now in the sort of last section without proposed dates to them. So we had expected today the energy plan actions and a report on retrofit and the service plans. Similarly, the climate partnership and the green financing roadmap. But these have been sort of sitting there on our agenda for ages now. We get dates put, and then we get to dates, no reports. Can we get some firm timings for these so we know? But I'm certainly keen to see all of those.
Would you mind dropping me an email as a reminder of that, and to Jamie on those that you listed? Otherwise, they'll go out of my head very quickly. So yeah, thank you very much, and we'll try and schedule it, but it's going to be very difficult to get all of this stuff in before March, if not impossible. So it may have to go on into the new year. If there's no other comments, I think I can move on to closing the meeting. Right. Okay. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. And a very Merry Christmas if I don't see you before then, and a Happy New Year. I was delighted when Councillor Denton bought the box of Quality Street, which I might well have done if I thought about it, but then she only shared it with one political group, so I have no particular, I have my